let's just go right ahead and go into our invocation and prayer. Mr. Jarvis, Pastor Jarvis, would you please?
Thank you.
If everybody would rise.
Good morning, everyone. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we come before you today thankful that we live in one of the most beautiful places on earth. We're thankful to see your hand of protection and provision on us here in Southwest Florida. Father, as a storm heads towards our area, we are reminded that you are the God who will not only see us through the storms of life, but you are also the God who tells us to speak to the wind and the waves and say, "Peace, be still." Lord, I pray for wisdom, safety, and protection for all of Florida from Hurricane Ian. Today, God, we have the opportunity to discuss some important topics that affect everyone who lives in this community. So we ask for your guidance as we discuss these issues. Help us to discuss these things with civility, patience, and respect. And most of all, Lord, help us to make decisions that will best benefit Collier County, her citizens, and her future. Lord, I also pray for the leadership here in Collier County. They have important conversations ahead of them today and the responsibility to make wise decisions on behalf of our community. I pray for your peace over them, and I pray blessings over their families. Your word tells us in the book of James that if we ask for your wisdom, you will give it to us in generous abundance. So we ask for it this morning, and we receive it thankfully by faith. And Lord, I pray this according to your word, and I pray it in the name and authority of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Saunders, will you lead us this morning? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Heath. Thank you. And as we're all taking our seats, I know Pastor Heath for a long time, and that was Pastor Heath Jarvis of the Faith Life Worship Center. Thank you. Appreciate that very much.
Chair, I believe you wanted to observe a moment of silence for two of our colleagues.
Yes, please. Commissioner Saunders, you want to say a few words before we do?
Yeah, just one quick comment. Dave Likens, who worked as my assistant for 6 years, passed away suddenly about a week ago. Dave was a very committed public servant. He had worked for the city of Naples for a number of years, retired, pardon me, and came to work for me when I first got elected in 2016. He truly was a wonderful man. Everyone he interacted with only had really wonderful things to say about him, and he is truly missed, and I hope that he and his family are doing well. They're up in Kentucky. And Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the moment of silence.
Absolutely. And the other?
Chief Choate lost his son from a Immokalee fire.
Yes. Oh, no. Our friend Chief Choate of the Immokalee Fire Department's son was killed in a car accident over the weekend. Yeah, Jiminy Christmas. So 'tis the season for a prayer, ladies and gentlemen. If you would please rise. Amen. Well, there's a lot of reasons for us to be praying these days, especially with anybody that's watching the Weather Channel. So keep our friends in the northern end of Tampa and such in our prayers as well. They're staring at this thing right now. So, County Manager, if you want to, do we have any business that we're actually going to conduct today?
We do have a few items, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
I think first order of business is for me to take you through the change sheet.
Yes, ma'am.
Quite a few items being moved so we can move this agenda along. First is add on item 5A. This is an update on the status of Hurricane Ian and its potential impact on Collier County. This is being added at board direction and staff's request. We have add-on item 10C, which is a recommendation to appoint Randy Sparazza as a member to the Collier County Planning Commission representing Commission District 1. This was added at Commissioner LaCastro's request. Continue item 9B to the October 11th, 2022 BCC meeting This is a recommendation to consider an ordinance to establish a notice to tenant ordinance relating to landlords providing written notice of rent increases over 5% to tenants with leases of 1 year or longer. This is being moved at Commissioner LeCaster's request. Continue item 10A to the October 11th, 2022 BCC meeting. This was continued from the September 13th, 2022 meeting. It's a request the board to appeal the hearing examiner's decision in hearing examiner decision number 2022-38, which finds that the proposed use of self-storage mini warehousing indoor is comparable in nature to other permitted uses in section 4.3A of the Wentworth Estates mixed-use planned unit development.
Breath.
On that particular item, a question for the county attorney. I have no issues with it being continued, but I want to make sure we're not missing a time frame, and I understand legal counsel for the property owner has agreed to an extension of the required time period. I just want to make sure we're not.
Yeah, I'd like the agreement by the property owner's counsel to be on the record. Just, I know he's present, if he can just be asked.
What? Okay. All right.
He sent us an email last night, but Noel, if you.
Right.
Good morning, Noel Davies on behalf of the property owner for this item, item 10A. And for the record, my client is agreeable to extend today's discussion on this item to your October 11th meeting in light of the hurricane.
But also to extend the time period for filing, for us to have the appeal.
Right, so there's a 30-day filing for the county to file an appeal. That 30 days will have run just before your October 11th meeting. So we're not objecting to this being heard and potentially appealed, subject to your normal process and to
So
the
you're
majority vote
agreeing
at that time.
that time period is extended so we can hear this.
Correct. Correct.
Just want to make sure on the record that that was clear.
And if I can just say, I pulled quite a few things off of the agenda today to include this one. He sent us he sent me and a few others a detailed email last night echoing all that, so we'll put that in the record. And the things I've pulled off, I just think with the hurricane, coming near us, anything that's up for debate, whether it's a 60-day rental ordinance or other things, there's citizens that told us they wanted to be here and couldn't and things like that. So it's nothing personal or
Thank you, Noel.
just priorities.
We're all good. Let's
It's
go
important
ahead
to
and
me
finish
my
up our,
client that you discuss
we're good.
more important business.
Thanks, Mr. Davies.
Thank you. Let's finish up our agenda and then we'll go forward with our commentary.
Absolutely. Continue item 10B to the October 11th, 2022 BCC meeting. This is a recommendation to have the board discuss the proposed US 41 East zoning overlay impacts upon self-storage facilities along US 41 between the Palm Street Commercial Drive US 41 intersection and the Price Street US 41 intersection, designed to implement the East Naples Community Development Plan, as accepted by the board in 2022. This is being moved at Commissioner LeCastro's request. Continue item 16A15 to the October 11th, 2022 BCC meeting. This item was further continued from the September 13th, 2022 BCC meeting. It's a recommendation to review options to increase public awareness for new site development plan and site development plan amendment applications. This is being moved at Commissioner McDaniel's request. Continue item 16H2 to the October 25th, 2022 BCC meeting. This is a request that the board adopt a proposed resolution by Mr. David Silverberg that condemns anti-Semitism in all forms and expressions, condemns all forms of discrimination, prejudice, and hate against any person or group of people, regardless of faith, gender, creed, sexual orientation, or national origin. This is being moved at Commissioner McDaniel's request out of respect for requests related to the Rosh Hashanah holiday. Last is continue item 16C2 to the October 11th, 2022 BCC meeting. This is a recommendation to approve several agreements that allow Gulf Coast Junior Golf Tour, Inc., doing business as the First Tee of Naples Collier, a Florida not-for-profit corporation, to sublease, construct, and operate the First Tee Naples Collier Learning Center on a portion of the Golden Gate Golf Course property with a term of 99 years and a right of first refusal in furtherance of the intent of the board-approved Collier County Standard Form long-term lease and operating agreement. This is being moved at the Clerk of Court's request. I have one time certain item. That is item 5A, our add-on item relative to the hurricane. It will be heard immediately following the approval of the amended regular consent and summary agenda. So that will be your next item to be heard.
Okay, Commissioner Taylor, you're lit up. Do you have a
Yes,
comment?
Yes, just, and I'm not sure how critical this is, and this is certainly not a criticism, County Manager, but when you read continue item 10B and the 1, 2, 3, 4th line, you referenced October 2022. It should have read 2020, and I didn't know how important
Oh,
that.
I'm sorry.
No, you don't
You're
have to be
correct.
sorry.
Absolutely. For the record, that item, continued item 10B, which is being continued to October 11th, 2022, references the plan that was accepted by the board in October of 2020.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And then the 16H2, I would like to see if I have agreement. I would like a voice vote on that one item when it comes before us. So maybe this needs to be moved to the regular agenda.
Yeah, and I'm gonna, since we're in the process of discussing this, I don't have an intent of having a public hearing on this item. I may be switching this to a proclamation. I candidly don't even think it needs to be said. I was asked by Mr. Silverberg to present this. I put it on the consent agenda as such, and then you reminded me of the holiday, so I continued the item, and now we're having discussions. I'm really not interested in having a big public hearing on things that should be done in the normal course of business and with respect. And so I may just switch this over to an actual proclamation.
That would place it on the regular agenda, but rather it wouldn't involve extended public comment at that.
Correct. So that potentially, Commissioner Taylor, is what I have intentions of doing with that item.
I still would like a voice vote on it. Thank you.
We're not going to vote on the proclamation.
I understand.
So there you go. Commissioner Saunders.
I don't want to belabor this, but I'm not sure what we would be having a voice vote on. The request on the agenda is to continue that until October 25th.
Right.
And we're going to vote on the consent agenda, which will have that change in it. So in terms of having an individual vote on that, I don't see any point in that.
I think given the tenor today, I think it's very important that each commissioner, I've felt this, each commissioner agrees or doesn't agree to this particular resolution.
If I can clarify, I think Commissioner's asking for a voice vote when it comes back onto the agenda,
Yeah,
not
not now.
not today.
Okay, sure, fine.
Oh, thank you.
We'll have a discussion about that whenever
Understood.
it comes onto
So-
the agenda.
So now you corrected me.
Now we're even.
I've said many times that I'm easily confused. I was very confused.
In whatever form or format it in fact comes back, so.
I want to go on the record that I followed that conversation perfectly, so I don't know why it was confusing.
That's why you're going to be the chair in January, sir.
That's right.
That wasn't commentary either, Commissioner McDaniel. That was just stating fact.
Oh, good. Thank you. I believe we have some public comment before we take a vote on the consent and,
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman. I have one here in the room and one online. First, on item 16D7, Nicholas, I hope I'm reading this right, Pringle? Partiality. Wow.
Wow.
It wasn't pronunciation. I couldn't read the writing. Sorry.
Good morning, Board of Commissioners. I know we have a lot going on right now with this upcoming hurricane. I did want to address 16D7 regarding Tiger Tail Beach and Barefoot Beach concessions. I'm the president of SSG Recreation, Inc. Currently, we're paying a 20% commission to the county. The 20% commission is too high. It's not allowed us to be in a profit margin. We're requesting a reduction to 13% if the county commissioners will approve, or a termination due to the non-profitability for the margins at Tiger Tail and Barefoot Beach.
thank you. Commissioner Castro.
Well, I took an extensive meeting on this from the Parks and Rec leadership, and I thought we had agreed to a mutual termination. So I don't know if this is subject to discussion. It's at the chair's request, but I hear everything that you're saying. But some of what you're requesting as far as the reduction in percentages and whatnot isn't what I heard just, I think it was yesterday. It was yesterday from our Parks and Rec leadership. So that might be something if we need to confirm rumor from fact. It sounded like we were having a mutual termination because you haven't been profitable out there, and Tiger Tail is always a challenge. But I thought it sounded like we were on the same sheet of music because I've had this on my short list as well. So this is news to me, a reduced percentage.
Yes, sir. There was no mutual agreement. I haven't even been in discussion with the Parks and Recreations Department. I've sent multiple emails, calls with no return. I do have a letter that I requested to the, yes, sir.
You have to forgive me, that we're not in a debate here, that we are in the process of accepting and ratifying our hearing today. If Commissioner LaCastro wishes to pull your item up and have a discussion about it, we will. We're not debating it right now.
Yes, sir.
Just for edification, and I'm not being rude, it's just, we're not here to debate with regard to the request. There's an item on our agenda that's presented as our agenda. If Commissioner LaCastro or one of my colleagues wishes to pull it, we will.
Yes, sir.
So say your piece, and then we're going to go on about our business.
Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Okay. Commissioner Taylor, did you have a comment on that?
Yes, I was just questioning whether this shouldn't be pulled for discussion today, as the gentleman is here. I would support that if there's a motion to that effect.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Saunders?
I agree, 16D7 should be placed on the regular agenda. If there's a...
Go ahead and make that motion.
I'll make
please.
that motion.
And then Commissioner Taylor will second it.
I will second it.
It's okay. We've got that moved and seconded for right now as an adjustment. Is there any other discussion on that item alone? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign, so
We're
moved.
going to hear this today.
Okay, thank you for hearing me. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
So stick around.
That becomes item 11E.
Got it. Okay, we have
And
somebody
Mr.
else
Chairman, we had
online?
one more. Online, we have Stephen Kirk, who wishes to speak on item 16D3. Mr. Kirk, you should be prompted to unmute yourself at this time. And I'm waiting. There he is. Mr. Kirk, you have 3 minutes. All right, I'm not hearing him. Pull the cable on me here.
Hang on a second, Mr. Kirk. If you can hear me 1 second, we can hear you way off in someone's apparatus, but it's not coming through the speakers right now. So be still 1 second. We won't start your clock until we get you online.
Give me just a minute here, sir.
Oh, God, that's my problem.
So maybe it was your problem.
It might have been.
All right, Mr. Kirk, proceed, please.
Good morning, Stephen Kirk, President of Rural Neighborhoods. This issue was tabled a number of weeks ago, and I simply want to say in regards to this that Rural Neighborhoods has taken all steps with its funders, Florida Housing Finance Corporation, to alter the direction of its project from being an unaccompanied housing project to being a family one. And Florida Housing Finance Corporation staff have prepared to recommend the change from unaccompanied to family, and we are taking all changes with all steps with our general contractor to alter floor plans to make that happen. So I just wanted to reassure the commission. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Stephen. And I appreciate you taking a moment just for my colleagues. I did meet with Stephen and Dottie last week on Wednesday, talked about that. They agreed then with me that they were going to switch that use from the male dormitory to a family facility, which is far more conducive for its location. So, and I appreciate you coming on record and sharing that today, sir. So that's all we have.
All we have.
Okay. Well, let's go through, we'll start with Commissioner Taylor. Do you have any ex parte and/or additional adjustments to the agenda for today?
Yes, my ex parte, it's here somewhere.
Want me to go down to Commissioner Solis, because he's ready?
Yes,
I could tell.
he's ready.
I can tell just by looking at him. Oh, hey, good morning.
Good morning. No other changes. My only disclosure is on 17C, and I had a call on that with Mr. Possession.
Thank you. Commissioner LaCastro.
No changes, no disclosures.
Gotcha. Commissioner Saunders.
I have no disclosure. I do have one item that I think I want to continue, and that's item 9A. And That deals with the Immokalee Rural Village overlay. And we've received some communication. I think there's some concern about the wildlife corridors. I know we have several speakers here. I guess what we can do, Mr. Chairman, is hear that, but I think I just want to alert the board that I may be making a motion to continue that because I think that there may be some misinformation or
Well, I think we can clarify that, Commissioner. Just so you know, I have had communication with both sides of that equation, and been assured that because I'm sticking on that wildlife corridor as well, and I've talked to the applicant, and there are some things that I think we can hear it and actually come to a conclusion. So,
perfect. Okay, I have no other changes.
okay. Commissioner Taylor, you ready?
I am.
Okay.
So 16A8, I had calls, and 17C, I've had meetings, emails, and calls, phone calls.
Okay, good. And I myself have no other adjustments to the agenda, and as well on no disclosure. Well, 17C, I have had phone calls, emails, and no other communication or correspondence.
And, Mr. Chair, I misspoke. I did have some communications in reference to 17C, so I did miss
Okay,
some meetings.
very good, very good. So with that, I'll call for a motion for the agenda as amended and approved.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the agenda as amended and approved. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign, same sound. So moved.
Commissioners, that brings us to our add-on item 5A. This is an update on the status of Hurricane Ian and its potential impact on Collier County. Mr. Dan Summers, your Director of Emergency Management, will present.
Commissioners, good morning. For the record, Dan Summers, Director of your Bureau of Emergency Services and Emergency Management. I know you have a busy day, so we'll try to be brief and be gone, but a lot of information to share with you. Obviously, we're watching Hurricane Ian with its developing Category 3, Category 4 possibilities. I have mentioned to you yesterday, and I'll echo this again to you today, that what we're dealing with here is a real challenge with a parallel track. And we can speculate an awful lot on the track and the forecast, and it's important that we take a baseline assumptions, a baseline set of assumptions for emergency planning, but more importantly, let you know that we've been able to scale that if we need to escalate or de-escalate throughout the next couple of days. Let me run straight to the modeling.
Thank you, dear.
Troy, I'm hung up here. Here we go. So to cut short any of the particular movement here, the track this morning from the National Hurricane Center, you look at the storm track and its intensity, as well as the center of the storm here, and we're looking at 100 potentially on Wednesday morning at 2 a.m., 130 miles per hour, Cat 4 moving at 10 miles per hour. What you see in the blue is our tropical storm force winds, and what you see in the black is the ultimate timing for those winds joining the Collier County coast. You do see the cone, which, as you see, takes the center of the storm and the most intense part of the storm to Fort Myers and Sarasota based on today's current track and current forecast. As I have mentioned before, our goal is to make sure that we have a protective strategy in place, for these onshore winds and the potential 3 to 5, 4 to 7 storm surge inundation could occur. Our focus is continuing to be on storm surge and localized flooding, not so much wind. So a high degree of confidence that we're not going to hit hurricane force winds, but more concern about the lower wind speeds and that constant onshore flow. All of this information is consistent throughout our local media, as well as the information we're getting from the National Hurricane Center every couple of hours directly into the Emergency Operations Center. Take you back to the forecast, take you back to our presentation just a little bit. Our focus. It's important that you understand what I think or what we believe is our best mission focus for the Emergency Operations Center. And for our entire team, our county employees, our public safety responders, our partner agencies, it's important that we let them know what mission goals and objectives are, and no doubt they'll do a great job to respond to that. React to coastal flooding. Monitor the health, safety, and welfare of our most vulnerable populations along our immediate coastline with a focus on those that are flood vulnerable and electrically dependent. Again, the likelihood of some intermittent power outages, the potential for some localized flooding. It is the frail and elderly, electrically dependent population, and our staff worked to make telephone notifications to those individuals registered with us yesterday, worked into the late hours last night to telephonically communicate with a lot of those individuals to help make sure that they had a plan or if they needed our assistance. Monitor and react to potential isolated inland flooding. Ensure the public knows that conditions overnight may escalate, especially during high tide. Remind the public to evaluate their risk and understand that in most cases, sheltering in place is appropriate. Again, you hear us all hurricane season, know your risk, know your flood elevation. And again, folks are 99 times out of 100 more comfortable sheltering in place than they are going to an evacuation shelter. Keep our team and our community well informed, and we're going to build contingencies and scale public and emergency worker shelters if needed. So again, scaling is important. I want to highlight the A zone. We've heard this discussion already on the local media from Fort Myers and Lee County. This is our A zone. These are our areas that we continue to worry about with the potential storm surge inundation, and we've couched that very simply as are those folks that are west and south of US 41. And again, we're working closely with Everglades City, Marco Island, the city of Naples. This information, the A zone, is well posted. And again, we will see what the storm ultimately develops with the onshore flow and the potential for storm surge inundation. My protective action recommendations to you are as follows: that our Emergency Management Department of Health and our partner agency, certainly with the school district, our public safety responders, we will open a special needs shelter at Palmetto Ridge High School for those vulnerable clients located in Zone A, and we have reached out to those. We will be prepared to open that shelter at 5 p.m. today. And again, this is a voluntary evacuation, a voluntary recommendation, and to let our frail and elderly in the A zone be aware that we have a special needs shelter ready to accommodate oxygen or electrical dependency. That will open at 5 o'clock. We'll have more news releases forthcoming on that throughout the day. We do have teams over there now. There is an extensive setup involved in doing this, a lot of supplies and equipment to be offloaded and set up to accommodate that population as well. Additionally, again, as a voluntary, as an option that is available to our residents, we're opening 4 middle schools that will open at 5 o'clock today. They are Oak Ridge Middle School, Corkscrew Middle School, Golden Gate Middle School, and Immokalee Middle School. We will make those available at 5 o'clock today. Residents must come prepared with their bedding, their food, their comfort items, quiet toys for the game, etc. for the kids. All middle schools are pet friendly, but you are responsible for self-care. You're responsible for crating that animal, following our rules, bringing your water, your food, your vaccination records, etc. must be brought with you. Our Emergency Operations Center will open at 3 p.m. today and go around the clock until further notice. Mike Shaw, our Operations Coordinator, will designate the agencies that are needed. At this point, with the voluntary evacuation, we will staff our mission-critical organizations in there, and Mike will contact those agencies for posting in the Emergency Operations Center. John Mullins, will manage our information lines, our 311, and our joint information center, and he will scale that and staff that according to need in conjunction with a battle rhythm for the Emergency Operations Center. I have a couple of things for board recommendation for possible actions. When we do offer evacuation shelter opening, we want to make sure that we provide transportation capability. Our Collier area transit can and will have buses set up for transportation to the shelters, and we typically waive those fares for the evacuation. In the unlikely event that Collier County EMS has to do a medical evacuation associated with this A zone, we typically waive those EMS transport fees as well. We will be contacting and contracting with our convalescent ambulance services as first available, but if Collier EMS is summoned for evacuation transport, we typically waive those fees. We also left a placeholder in our previous discussion that if the sheriff and the county manager would like to institute a curfew, they can do that, or they will be in contact with you. I have no recommendations for a curfew today unless the sheriff has anything additional to add.
Let me go ahead and call for that motion now and get that out of the way.
That'd be great.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we authorize the waiver of the fares and emergency transport as necessary, and that the sheriff and county manager call for a curfew if so required. So, any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Same sign. So moved.
Just a couple more, Mr. Chairman. Again, our important reminders to the community. Stay in touch. Monitor with what the current conditions. We have a real significant storm paralleling our coast. The forecast model right now appears to be very reliable, or the Hurricane Center has a fair amount of confidence in that forecast track as it parallels offshore to us. But we also know that things can change when we see a storm of this intensity. Understand your flood risk. We talk about that again all year. You can look online for your flood elevation. You can evaluate your risk. And if you've had historical high tide flooding, this is something, again, you need to remind yourself about. Be prepared for some intermittent power outages. Stay well away from any downed power lines. Call your utility company. Call FP&L. Call Lee Co-op. If you have an outage, because it records them in their system, and they have repaired the line on the street but may not have addressed the line to your home. So always make that notification. General information, our 311 call center is up to help guide residents and guests with additional information. Again, remind everyone not to call 911 except in an extreme emergency condition. And remember, it was said earlier, I think this is a marathon, not a sprint. Stay hydrated, stay safe, look after your neighbor, and we've done this before. We'll work together as a community to respond and recover. So again, we're watching this very carefully. We have given our community options for evacuation if they think it's necessary. And again, we've got a couple of more advisories to get out, so we'll see ultimately what the track is and what its impacts may be to Collier County.
County Manager, you want to talk a little bit about our conversation this morning in my office with regard to county operations and such?
Yes, sir. So we are recommending that we scale back regular county operations this afternoon, starting in the early afternoon, allowing the staff, we have many staff that live outside of the area, allowing them the time to get home and complete their preparations this afternoon, calling for, again, a reduction in regular county operations tomorrow. This is consistent with our partners around the clerk of courts or the court system and Lee County. Both are taking a similar posture. We have the ability then to evaluate how we return to normal business on Thursday using the Alert Collier system and other means to call the folks back in. But that seems the best course of action in light of the fact that we expect deteriorating weather conditions throughout the day and into at least a part of tomorrow. Now, this does mean that folks that have disaster assignments, they know where they need to be, and we will be working through how we start those evaluations as the weather clears potentially tomorrow, and we'll get out and do our assessments and things. So I'll be working with the department heads and Mr. Summers on that plan going forward, but we wanted to advise the board that that's our recommendation at this time, and if Dan has anything to add.
I just want to, again, thank the entire team, the partner agencies. We've asked county employees and other municipal employees to go the extra mile and then some, and we really do appreciate their help and their flexibility.
And I want to thank you. You know, there's an interesting process going on when the news media is saying a whole bunch of different things, and people's opinions start to fly into how we should and what we should be doing. And it's been with your steadfast judgment that we've been moving forward here, without a lot of hyperbole. And there's an enormous amount of it that's going on out there. The storm's coming. There's a big storm that's going past us at this particular stage. We all need to be aware. We all need to be cognizant of it. We all need to take care of our neighbors as we go. But I really appreciate both of you staying in constant communication with me, and helping us guide us through this. I mean, the sheriff came on Sunday at our emergency meeting. We've been preparing for this storm since last week. Generators, people are assigned to different circumstances, and as such, our facilities are very well, in fact, prepared. And I want to say thank you to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to the
Mr.
team.
Castro.
Mr. Summers, just a quick question, because you're monitoring this 24/7. A big part of this storm is surge. As it's projected now, obviously, things can shift. A major vulnerability in Collier County, but especially in my district with Marco, Isles of Capri, Goodland, low-lying areas of Henderson Creek, and that whole stretch is surge. We spoke briefly, but I really want you to put this on the record. I hear a lot of folks tell me in my district, well, storm surge was supposed to be 15 feet for Irma, but it was a fraction of that. And then I try to educate them that it was really a last-minute shift in the storm. Not to say it would have been 15 feet, but there were other things that happened that lessened the storm surge. If this storm keeps on its current path, 15 feet isn't estimated for storm surge, but I'd like to hear your comments that when 3 to 5 feet, especially in District 1, is projected, that is not a gross overestimation, correct? If you could give us the science behind it so people understand that this is totally different than Irma. It's good that we don't have as much of the wind it stays its course, but would love for you to just give us the short version of the differences and why storm surge is a real concern, even with the numbers that are projected, because 5 feet's a lot in certain areas of District 1.
Well, you're exactly correct, sir. First of all, let's talk about this. The storm surge is full of variables. There's many variables on the storm as there are angles of approach for that storm hitting Collier County. We know our Gulf is shallow, and if you envision how you blow across a soup bowl, you're blowing water into our community. You're blowing it into the shoreline, into the estuaries. So what we have to do is take the forecast data, and the experts at the National Hurricane Center give us their very best estimate. And we do use algorithms within the computer. We use atlas-type information. We're using real-time weather information to come up with these estimates. Mother Nature does not always follow the guidance we have in the software. We're taking the high average, and that's a fair statement. We take the high average of these potentials because we want to make sure that we're erring on the side of safety. And so, yes, if we're a foot or two off, hey, we were prepared and we were fortunate. What we don't want to do is underestimate and have our public at a last-minute risk. So again, continuing to monitor. We're using all the science that we have available. This is not something that is dreamed up in storm surge inundation values. There's bathymetry. Our coastline has been mapped. The computers have the data to talk about our impact along the shoreline, and we're conveying to you the best information that we can acquire.
I think it's a true statement that even if the storm parallels our coast and is hundreds of miles off the coast, because we're on the so-called dirty end of the storm, we're not out of the clear because we don't have 130-mile-an-hour winds, but that the surge with the direction of this storm is quite a bit different than previous storms where maybe the surge was estimated and then we didn't have it. I mean, correct?
That is correct. We're on the right quadrant, paralleling the right quadrant, but either way, it's going to blow water in. And as you have seen, storm surge models go up today for Jacksonville, meaning that they're on the far right side, and that water, that coastal flow is relevant. And even as we have seen exiting storms, we've had coastal onshore flow. So we have to watch it, pay attention to it, watch what it does after midnight tonight and then on to tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
We actually did a little in-house as well, and if the storm stays on its current track with its current distance, it should be passing us at the ebb high tide, which is top of the high tide, which means now the water's going out. When the wind changes direction, it comes in from the southwest. So we've got some movement of pushing the water back up in, but we are naturally, tide's going out, and then balancing that with whatever rainfall in fact comes for a place for that sufficient water to run off and get into our systems and be able to move as well to keep the localized flooding at a low roar. So bottom line, that modeling was done on a yellow tablet, by the way. And Commissioner Taylor adeptly pointed out on Sunday that there is something that happens twice in 24 hours, and that is the tide. And so we looked at that in relationship to the current path. And again, stay tuned. Collier alerts a really good way to go. 311 is a really good way to go. If you see localized flooding, take a picture of it, email it to us at 311. That will allow our group to be able to get out, clear debris, clean storm drains, so on and so forth, to mitigate the circumstances.
Yes, sir. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Commissioners, we do have a couple of folks in the audience here that may just want to comment before we wrap up.
I want to call on the sheriff. He's
And
been
also
dutifully
Lisa
sitting here.
Keeler from the Big Cypress Basin is also in the room, if you have any questions or if she would like to make any comments. And last, the county attorney will be preparing some documents relative to the curfew that we'll be bringing back to you just to get everything in place that we'll need right after the court reporter break.
Outstanding. Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Kevin Rambos, Collier County Sheriff. I concur with the brief that you've gotten thus far. We are incrementally staffing up. I think from a very basic perspective, if you get done what you need to get done during the day today, settle in at home and stay there, watching what the weather is doing, because by 2, 3 in the morning, that's when we should be starting to see our highest, as the director said. And, you know, a lot of places are closed tomorrow. So just a couple of recommendations: simply stay out of standing water with you or your car. That's pretty simple. And really, if you don't need to have to be out,
Don't go.
don't go out. It's that simple. I will tell you that fire, rescue, EMS working together with EM are fully functional, and they will incrementally increase overnight. So there'll be plenty of people out there in case anybody needs assistance.
Outstanding. Thank you, sir. Anybody have any questions for our good sheriff? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Lisa? Miss Lisa? I didn't see you in the back.
Good morning. I was sitting back with your team, always coordinating. Commissioners, I just wanted to let you know that we are ready for the rainfall that we are expected today. Big Cypress Basin has been getting ready for this storm for the better part of a week. As you had said, Mr. Chair, this is not something that happens overnight. We have been opening the canals. They are fully open. Amy, do you have the graphic I sent? We have information that's on our website, so anybody can go on and look at our canal levels. It's a great little tool. to see just how far we have reduced those canal levels. We are in constant contact with your stormwater team.
Trinity's behind you.
Oh,
I was just warning you that she was sneaking up, just so you know. I was watching.
thank you. So while she's still getting that, oh, it is up. Can you zoom? Does it zoom?
That's a pretty picture, but what's that mean?
Okay. So the blue bars show you the canal sections that are below our normal operating criteria. The green bars we're just say at the bottom range of that criteria. What you see in the light blue bands, let me see if I can go back. So this light blue area that you see in there, that's where we normally are operating during our regular wet season. So you can see these blue bars are well below our normal ranges. So we are prepared, we are ready for the rainfall that is expected. Like I said, we've been working very closely with Trinity's group and Road and Bridge, and I think we are well situated for what lies ahead.
I would agree with that. I've been watching the canals as they go down as I'm traversing the community. Commissioner Taylor, do you have a question for her?
I do. So the question, at least of some of my constituents, is, okay, you've opened these canals, you're bringing them down. Where's the water going?
So for the primary system, we have coastal outfalls at Coco 1, which is along the north side of Immokalee Road. Our second outfall is at GG1, which is at Spanky's, which discharges into Naples Bay. And our third coastal discharge is at Henderson Creek, right at 41 and Collier Boulevard. And the fourth one is FACA Union.
Okay. And so the discharges aren't like one fell swoop where there's this major rush of water, is that correct?
We've been discharging for over a week.
It's been going on.
Yeah. Those are the places we discharge throughout the year, but we have,
That needs to be said, because
right, it's not just right now. I mean, we've been discharging at those locations. That's where we have been
that's
for the last
normal,
40 years.
Normal operation.
Yes.
Thank you.
OP, yes. Commissioner Solis.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you just, for anybody that's watching, tell us the website address?
Oh, sure.
And two, is there any way that I could get this particular graph so that I could send that out?
I will.
There's a lot of people that live along that Coco 1 canal are sitting there biting their nails looking at the canal. So this is great information. Thank you.
Absolutely. The district website is sfwmd.gov, and this is the site status report. So you can Google that in the bar, but I will also send you the link and this graphic in an email.
Okay. Thank you.
All of us.
All of it. Yes.
It's good seeing you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, if you'd like to, I can put, Mr. Klatskow has the resolution relative to the curfew should it need to be implemented. I can put it on the visualizer now. The dates are blank, obviously, because we're not implementing a curfew now, but this puts the structure in place for us to be able to implement. And that would be a decision between the county manager, the sheriff, and in coordination with the chair.
And we've necessarily already voted on this, or do you want us to vote on it again?
Yeah, I think because the sheriff may have to be incarcerating people on this, that we get as much formality as we can.
Okay. So give us a moment to review it and read it.
Sure. So we're approving this, is the curfew starting
No.
today?
No.
We're approving this with a blank date so that it can be filled in later.
That is correct, and
Okay.
with concurrence with the sheriff, the county manager, and myself.
Yeah, so we're delegating that decision to you all for the sake of time, that if a curfew was recommended by the sheriff and you and the chair agreed, that you already have our concurrence, that we would agree, and the foundation is here to sign quickly.
Correct. That way we don't have to call a meeting to have the curfew.
Yes.
I make a motion that we accept this resolution, leaving the dates of the curfew in the open and giving that authority to our chair and the sheriff and also our county manager.
It doesn't say the sheriff and county manager in here, it's just solely with me, but, I mean, that is the way it's in fact going to happen. And Commissioner Saunders adeptly said it on Sunday, we don't have to have a meeting to decide if we're going to have a meeting. So it's been moved that we accept this as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign, same sound, so moved.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Commissioners, that moves us to awards and recognitions. We have several attendees today. Our first, item 3A1, 20-year attendees. 20 years, Frank Inzano, wastewater power systems manager.
Come up here and get your picture taken.
Hey, Frank, congratulations.
Where are you going, Frank? Pay attention to the camera lady. Here we go. I'll just stay up here. We don't have to keep shuffling around. Who's next?
Next attendee is 20 years, Troy Miller, Communications, Government, and Public Affairs Manager of Television Operations.
Troy, I remind you, you have 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes, Troy.
Congratulations, Troy.
That is so appropriate, yeah. Thanks for everything you do.
Thank you, my friend.
All right.
Sir, please unmute yourself. Please unmute.
Flashes.
I did want to thank a couple people. If the county attorney will set the timer for 20 minutes.
Did you fill out a slip?
20 years, Michael Sawyer, Capital Project Planning Impact Fees Project Manager.
Oh, wow.
That's a working man's tie. I like that.
Here's your fancy pack. Just keep reading and walk back over there, Commissioner Solis. I've got one more.
25 years, Mary Topoleski, Parks and Recreation, Supervisor of Community Centers.
Hey, man, congratulations. Congratulations.
Outstanding.
Commissioners, that brings us to item 3D, Employee of the Month. This is a recommendation to recognize Paul Flegg in the Parks and Recreation Division as the August 2022 Employee of the Month. And I will read a little bit about this. In just under a year of service to the county, Paul has demonstrated a high level of enthusiasm and devotion in his role, taking on special projects and leading new programs. Earlier this year, Paul co-founded and led a pilot program called Collier After Dark. This program demonstrates parts of the county that might otherwise remain a mystery to most park visitors. Collier After Dark offers activities including evening nature walks and beachcombing, education regarding the region's nocturnal animals, astronomy, and hosting various guest presenters. Paul's focus on visitor engagement and education is exhibited through his willingness to help others. He has demonstrated this by rescuing numerous beachgoers locked out of their vehicles and returning stray kickballs stuck in park trees to children whose ball games otherwise would have ended without his intervention. Paul values each interaction with visitors to the parks and strives to ensure they have a clean and safe environment. This past 4th of July, Paul volunteered to be the Parks and Recreation mascot, Shiro the alligator, and made a special appearance at the Sugden Regional Park. I actually saw him. That's so cool. Despite the sweltering July temperatures, Paul spent hours in a mascot costume, posing with children, interacting with families, and happily parading through the park to greet each visitor waiting to enjoy the fireworks. These interactions and contributions build on the vision of the Parks and Recreation Division to enrich the quality of life of the people we serve, and the Collier County vision to be the best community in America to live, work, and play. Paul's initiative, professionalism, and dedication make him an invaluable asset to the Collier County Parks and Recreation Division. For these reasons, Paul Flagg was selected as the August 2022 Employee of the Month. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Thanks.
Congratulations. Now, there's two things. I'm going to give you that. That's the most important. There's your plaque. And you're going to stick this in your pocket because there's a little dilly whopper back here that you will lose. Don't lose that. Got it? That was very specific instructions, Park Ranger. Here we go. Thank you.
Chair, we need to retake Frank's photo. It didn't turn out, so.
Really?
Sorry, we got to call you back up.
There we go. Everybody notice that Frank?
One of the commissioners broke the camera.
Which one?
Yeah.
Commissioners, that moves us to the proclamations. Item 4A is a proclamation designating October 2022 as Careers in Construction Month, to be accepted by Kathy Curatolo, J.P. Coleman, Eric Morris, and Robert McGinnis.
There we are. Hello.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, that'd be fine. Sure. Not now. Get your picture took, then you can do it.
Yeah, don't leave. Don't leave.
Now, sir.
This one work? All right. Hi, my name is J.P. Coleman, and I'm the current president of the Collier Building Industry Foundation. We were going to have some more board members here today, but obviously with the impending storm, they have an obligation to secure their job sites, so bear with us a little bit. On behalf of the 450-plus company members and staff at the Collier Building Industry Association and our foundation, I would like to extend our appreciation to the Board of County Commissioners, most particularly Commissioner Bill McDaniel, for acknowledging the work of our foundation in promoting careers in construction and offering thousands of dollars in scholarships to our local students who choose to further their education in the construction industry. To date, our members have provided funding in excess of $100,000 in local scholarships and grants. We are also proud to share these accolades with our partners at the Collier County Public Schools. Their assistance in providing this focus on careers in construction has been extremely productive in connecting our members with students who are potentially interested in working in the building industry. Once again, thank you for recognizing the need for a trained workforce for our local industry and acknowledging the work of the Collier Building Industry Foundation. Thank you.
JP, thank you. Thank you.
Item 4B is a proclamation designating October 2022 as Safe Infant Sleep Month in Collier County. The proclamation will be forwarded to Dana Breeden at the Florida Department of Health due to the fact that the offices of the recipients listed in the agenda item are preparing to open hurricane shelters.
And last but not least.
Last but not least, item 4C is a proclamation designating September 2022 as National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month in Collier County, to be accepted by Shayna Anderson, Board Treasurer of the Florida Southwest Chapter of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and members of the Collier County Coalition for Healthy Minds.
Of course. Hey, what are you doing out there in the reception?
Yeah, hey, look at her. Look at her.
See ya.
Good morning.
Yeah,
you did.
Yeah.
Pass it down there. To your left, lady. Kathy has her finger over the camera. See that? Do you want to say a few words? And then Commissioner Solis would like to as well.
Okay, I'll only take a couple minutes. Good morning, my name is Shayna Anderson. On behalf of the Southwest Florida chapter for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and as a member of the Collier County Healthy Minds Committee, along with Michelle, Trista, Beth Hatch with NAMI, and Scott Burgess with the David Lawrence Centers, we would like to thank you, commissioners, for recognizing September as Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. Our hope is to bring awareness and normalize these conversations to reduce stigmas and encourage our community members to reach out for help. We want to save lives. We could not do the important work that all of us do without your support, commissioners, so thank you. We are hosting annual Naples Out of the Darkness Walk on October the 29th at the North Collier Regional Park. Registration opens at 8 a.m. and opening ceremonies start at 8:30. If you'd like more information, you can find that on the AFSP website, afsp.org/Naples. We welcome everyone to join to save lives and bring hope for suicide prevention. So thank you.
Thank you for what you do. Please stay at the podium. Stay at the podium. Commissioner Solis has a few words.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to thank everyone on the coalition and everyone involved in this, especially the individuals that have volunteered to be part of the coalition. Just so that people know, a lot of them were individuals that served on the ad hoc committee that developed the Mental Health and Addiction Strategic Plan that wanted to continue to serve, and so have now committed to working in the coalition and to further the strategic plan. So thank you so much for your continued commitment to the community. It's really heartwarming. Thanks.
Thank you from all of us for the opportunity.
Yep.
Chair, if we could get a motion to accept the proclamations.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the proclamations as presented. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign, same sound, so moved. Now we can go to public comment.
That brings us to item 7, public comments on general topics, not on the current or future agenda.
Mr. Chair, we have 4 registered speakers today on this item, 3 in the room, 1 on Zoom. First up, we have Rayanne Burton. She'll be followed by Jackie Kay.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Rayanne Burton, 2530 31st Avenue Northeast, rural Golden Gate Estates, Naples, Florida. There's a serious threat of a hurricane with high winds in Naples, coastal storm surge, and schools closed, but we're here. If the public can make the meeting, then so also to the Commissioners, and thank you for doing that. Since we have come in spite of hurricane threat, we, the speaker, should be given 5 minutes as we're speaking for those that are securing their homes and have been evacuated. I just got my storms up yesterday. I still have more to do. This meeting should be canceled due to the public is restricted from coming due to the threat of a hurricane, possible high winds, hard rains, and flooding, more than we have now, a lot already in the estates. The school superintendents are wiser than the BCC board. They canceled the schools. It's not the safety of your constituents more important than developers making a profit? There's also a question of conflict of interest with the IRRV project with Commissioner Daniels. 4 foreclosed parcels of his in the project. He should excuse himself from voting. Also, there's a concern with contributors that get fundraising for mostly developers, contractors, commercial real estate.
Stop. This is on today's subject today. This is on items not on today's agenda. If you continue, I will stop you.
I am not continuing on that.
You're discussing items that are on today's agenda, young lady. Stop.
There's a conflict of interest that I am talking about.
This is an item. You can speak at that item when that item comes before us. Continue on with items that are not on today's agenda, please.
Thank you. Though this may be illegal, to me it's putting the fox in the hen house to guard the chickens. There is much concern with constituents that this board is favoring the developers over quality of life that they move to the estates to enjoy. We're losing wildlife habitat, seeing more invasion of bears, panthers, and even alligators in the residential area, some with devastating results and even human deaths. Also more roadkill and car accidents due to traffic increase. Development must be agreeable to all parts, not just the developer, but the project's neighbors as well. I sent a suggestion for a protocol for the speakers of this board. Public should now have 4 minutes to speak as stating name, address, and who they represent. Takes almost a minute, leaving 2. Public speakers, if interrupted by the BCC board, should have the time used by that board back to the speaker to give them the full minutes. If questions are asked by the BCC board, time used for the question should be added back to the public speaker to give the speaker the full time. If after the speaker sits down and comments are made by the chair or anyone of the board that may be offensive to the speaker or the speaker feels there should be a response, the speaker should have one-time right to answer or respond to the comment. The proper way to ask for permission to respond should be the speaker should ask, Mr. Chairman, may I respond to that statement? If at that time the speaker should be permitted a one-time response to the statement. If a public speaker is threatening or actual harm or so upset they cannot control their emotions, then and only then can that speaker be removed by the chairman. The public speaker should show respect to the board, and the board should not be checking laptops, cell phones, or getting up and moving around while the speaker is speaking. And they should be able to continue when it's not on the agenda.
And our next public speaker.
Your next public speaker is Jackie Key. She'll be followed online by Tom Ross. And Jackie's been seated 3 additional minutes from Brad Cornell, who is right there. She'll have 6 minutes.
Good morning, Jackie Kay. Since some Christians are using the Bible to justify their evil, hatred, and lies, I will use God's words to speak the truth. Sin is defined as a transgression of the law of God and a rebellion against God. which can cut you off from God's grace. The only unforgivable sin is blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. This also occurs when you attribute your evil actions in hatred to God. You are essentially saying that God is evil, just like Satan. The fruit of God's spirits are peace, love, joy, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. The 7 deadly sins are associated with Satan. They are pride, envy, wrath, gluttony, sloth, lust, and greed. Wrath is defined as uncontrolled feelings of hatred, anger, vengeance, and that was the first deadly sin to be unleashed on our country. Those guilty of this sin did not realize that they were also unleashing the other 6 deadly sins. Here are some clear examples. Pride. We have local, state, and federal citizens and elected officials who think they are above the law and that they are not even accountable to God. Wrath. Drastic increase in the number of children who are being abused, tortured, and murdered across this nation by their families, parents, and those who are trusted caregivers. Lust, a drastic increase in children as young as 3 weeks old who are being sexually molested, raped, and sold into sex trafficking. Greed. Investors, management companies, and some landlords are raising the rents too excessively that it is causing many hardworking Americans to go homeless. Likewise, some community members are so greedy that they are not even willing to share community resources with the working class. Certain elected officials are so focused on gaining and retaining power that they do not care that they are destroying our communities, state, and country. They would rather burn our nation down to the ground. Evil does have an expiration date. God will hold us all accountable for our private and public deeds. The same devil that gave them their power came to steal, kill, and destroy. He will collect from them and their children. Sin will never go unpunished without our confession, a change of heart, and asking Jesus' forgiveness. So, indoctrination on this level, we all know history happened during Nazi Germany. I'm an avid fan of history, especially World War II. As a matter of fact, my ex-mother-in-law, she and her siblings were also Hitler Youth, so I did get that firsthand perspective, as well as from many in the family. What you will see is there is a parallel between what happened during Nazi Germany and what is happening in America. The goal was, number one, racial purity as far as Aryan. If you were an Aryan, you were seen as defiled. You were sent to the concentration camp or in prison. So the goal was to get Hitler installed as their leader. We see the same thing going on here in America. Hitler was jailed for treason for a year, and we see Donald Trump was kicked out of office. And after that, he came back and he was able to gain control of the country. And what he did, the first thing was to tear down their democracy as well as to kill their opponents. We see the same thing if you go up against any elected official, you are kicked out of office or removed from that position. We also saw an overwhelming indoctrination of students and kids within the school system. It was the Rommel's belief that when you control the students, you control the future. So they indoctrinated children through the Hitler Youth, and indoctrination obviously began in the school system. And we see in our school system, children as well as teachers are being told what to learn, what not to learn, instead of allowing educators who are qualified and experienced to do their job. And we also see this blanket hate that has spread across our country. It's easier to indoctrinate people who already have hatred in their heart. And I just read a study, it was done in 2015 as far as anti-Semitism. Those who were indoctrinated during that time period are still holding those same beliefs and hatred in their hearts. One of the things that I see is so disheartening is an increase not only in anti-Semitic, attacks against the Jewish community, but you also see neo-Nazis in America who are going up and down the street terrorizing people, and our elected officials statewide, DeSantis, Trump, I don't care what you want to name them, they say nothing, and they say nothing because they are in agreement with what is going on. So unless we make some changes in our country, we're going to repeat those same mistakes. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I was informed Tom Ross is not in fact for public comment, but is on standby if needed as a consultant. So I've made a mistake on my 20th anniversary day. I think you should get rid of me.
Did we give you a bonus for 20 years? Or no?
I do not believe so, sir.
I didn't give it. That was the employee.
Yeah, only that guy got a check.
Okay. Yeah, we're good for now then. That's all we have.
Okay, sir, that brings us to item 9, advertised public hearings. Item 9A is a recommendation to adopt an ordinance creating the Immokalee Road Rural Village Overlay by amending Ordinance 8905 as amended, the Collier County Growth Management Plan of the unincorporated area of Collier County, Florida, specifically amending the future land use element and map series and conservation and coastal management element to create the IRRVO, to redesignate 585.13 acres of rural fringe mixed-use district receiving lands to sending lands, of which 578 acres are designated pursuant to the Hussey Settlement Agreement, resulting in 210.78 plus or minus acres of neutral lands, 1,991.36 plus or minus acres of receiving lands, and 585.13 plus or minus acres of sending lands, to allow development either per the Land Development Code or per the IRRVO at a maximum of 4,042 dwelling units. If developed per the IRRVO, a minimum of 3,000 dwelling units will be located in the receiving lands. A minimum of 25,000 square feet and a maximum of 125,000 square feet of civic, institutional, government uses will be allowed in the village center of receiving lands. A minimum of 50,000 square feet and a maximum of 250,000 square feet of commercial uses permitted by right and conditional use in the commercial, professional, and general office district through general commercial district, the first C1 through the general commercial district C4 zoning districts will be allowed in the village center of receiving lands, with all non-residential uses subject to a cap of 375,000 square feet in the receiving lands, and if developed per the IRRVO, to provide for calculation of density and greenbelt and native vegetation requirements. Furthermore, directing transmittal of the adopted amendment to the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity. We're ready to hear the petition.
Well, my only question is this is for the directing the transmittal. We've already transmitted this. This is the adoption hearing.
Mike Bosey, zoning director. I believe what the clarification was transmit for adoption.
I got it. Okay. It doesn't say that. I just, okay.
Understood.
And you quit reading. You want to finish off since you read the whole thing in the first place.
Well, I
Might as
hope
well
to
read
cut
it
off a
all.
little bit. I already had read all the acreages. You want me to keep it? I'll read the rest of it for
Yes.
you. So with that clarification, says transmittal for adoption, the subject property is 2,787.27 acres and located on the east side of Immokalee Road, approximately 2 miles north of Oil Well Road in sections 1 and 2, Township 48 South, Range 27 East, and sections 25, 35, and 36, Township 47 South, Range 27 East, Collier County, Florida. PL 20180002660. This is in Commission District 5.
Very good. And I believe this is ex parte, so we have swearing in of the people. Is it legislative? Oh, forgive me. My bad. No wonder you were making a face at me. All right, let's proceed.
Could I ask
Okay,
a question?
we were flipping a coin.
1 second, Bob.
1 second. On our agenda, it says this requires an affirmative vote for approval, even though this is not, this is a legislative issue?
Any change to the zoning map requires 4 votes.
Thank you.
For the record, Bob Mulhare with Hol Montez here on behalf of the applicant. I'm going to try to shorten up the presentation and focus on the highlights. With me, obviously, is Rich Jovanovich on behalf of the property owner, Don Schrotenboer. We also have Andy Woodruff and Norm Trebelcock, should you have questions on either transportation or environmental issues. I think you've seen this project before, so you know where it's located, depicted on the screen now. This briefly shows what surrounds us. Crew Trust to the west, Corkscrew Island neighborhood to the north and across Immokalee Road to the north, and Golden Gate Estates to the east. This is the subject property right here. Very briefly, this proposed overlay includes all 3 designations. It has receiving lands, it has neutral lands, and sending lands. Or it will have sending lands because in accordance with the Hussey settlement, the sending lands which are not designated right now are to be designated through this process.
With all due respect, just so what I'm understanding is not only are we
1 second.
viewing this.
If you would, please, let's just stay in touch with what it is that we're doing so that he's in this okay.
So we are actually, the Hussey designation will be decided in.
Yeah, there was as part of the Hussey settlement, there was a condition, the Hussey lands got some receiving lands, and 846 Land Trust at the time got sending lands. It was an exact swap of acreage, or pretty close to exact. Yep. This is your future land use map, and subject property is right here. This shows the receiving designation over the whole property, but as I said, and you'll see in just a minute, a portion of that will be designated as sending. This is a historic aerial from 1973 on the right and a current aerial on the left, and you can see that the land has been impacted in those really aren't very, very different. It's been impacted by agriculture and earth mining for many years. So here is the exact numbers. The neutral lands are 210.78 acres. There's no change in the acreage as part of this part of this adoption hearing from transmittal. The sending lands have increased, so we actually have 585.13 acres. That's 6.64 acres more than we had at the time of transmittal. And you'll see that the receiving lands have decreased. We now have 1,991.36 acres of receiving lands, which is 6.64 reduction from the time of transmittal. So that makes up the changes. This is the adoption language. I just highlighted in the areas, I already went over the acreage. The second highlighted sentence is the Hussey agreement, indicating that there will be a change in the acreage there. And then the last highlighted bullet indicates that, and this is a change from transmittal, that the IRRV lands may either be developed under the LDC section 20308A2A as set forth below. If the developer, it looks like the language is a little bit wrong in my slide, but if the developer does go forward with a village, the entire thing will be rezoned to a single planned unit development. And so this is the sending lands, which totals 585.13 acres. What I've highlighted here was in your transmittal
language, but I just wanted to call attention to it. If we restore those farm fields, there's between 85 and 100 acres of farm fields. We would get an additional bonus credit of 1 TDR per acre. And this shows those farm fields.
Those are over on the northeast side.
They're north on the northwest side, or sort of central.
Forgive me.
Yeah. The neutral lands provide for a connection to the north to Immokalee Road, and there's a large earth mining lake on those lands as well. We haven't made any changes to the neutral lands language, either a transmittal or adoption. It's just as is already provided for in your rural fringe mixed-use district. Again, the receiving lands, 1,991.36. I think the county manager highlighted these. I'll just go over them real quickly. If we go for a village, we're required to have the spine road. We're required to have a minimum of 50,000 square feet and a maximum of 250,000 square feet of allowable uses in C1 through C4 in the village center, and a minimum of 25,000 square feet and a maximum of 125,000 square feet of civic, institutional, and governmental uses. We also have provided for a research and technology park. This hasn't changed from transmittal, that has a minimum acreage size or a maximum acreage size and square footage. We are also committing to 100 multifamily units in the village center if we go with the village. Total square footage is capped at 375,000 for all of those non-residential uses. Again, in the village, this shows you how we could achieve the required maximum and minimum density. If we did a village, the minimum density is 3,000 units or 1.51 units per acre, and the maximum is 4,000 or 2.009 units. The receiving lands have a base density of 1 unit per 5 acres, which translates to 398. We're required to do affordable housing. We get a half a unit bonus for each of the 400 affordable housing units we would be required to provide. That's 200 dwelling units. From our sending lands, we can achieve 451 dwelling units. That includes the farm field restoration, TDRs. And we get a bonus in a village for every TDR credit, a one-to-one bonus, so there's another 451 DUs. So that would total 1,500 dwelling units that we could get from the Immokalee Road Rural Village overlay lands. That means to get to 4,000 units, we would be required to acquire 1,250 TDRs. And if we were to do the minimum, we would be required to acquire 750 TDRs. For a non-village, we get the base, 398. We get the sending land TDRs from our own sending lands of 451. And to get to 1 unit per acre, 1,991 units, we would be required to acquire 1,142 TDRs. So, you know, those are going for 18.5 to 20,000 right now, so we're talking about a big chunk of change, if you do the math. This is the conservation and coastal management element change. The Rural Fringe Mixed Use District, when it was adopted, required a 30% littoral planting area. We have, and this was approved to transmittal, but there's a slight change in it. The change is the first highlighted phrase. So this now reads, within the Immokalee Road Rural Village overlay, and this change was requested by staff, and implemented through a planned unit development or land development code amendment, the total littoral planting shelf area may be reduced to 15% if provided in one or more larger aggregated littoral planting areas providing greater habitat value. And this is just an example.
1 second. Commissioner Solis.
I don't want to interrupt the flow, but I don't understand that. And I'm trying to understand how a reduction is somehow better, and maybe Mr. Bosey could just answer that. That change to the littoral planning requirements was proposed by staff, or whoever could just explain that to me. I've read it twice and I still
Well, we
must
proposed
not have
it.
had enough coffee
We,
today.
we proposed it.
You proposed it?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out how a reduction is good.
Jamie Cook, your Director of Development Review. The Land Development Code in the Native Preservation section of the code, 30507, does allow for a reduction in the amount of littorals required within the rural fringe mixed-use district if they are doing, creating increased wetland habitat restoration, creating wading bird habitat, or creating other listed species habitat. So by doing the farm field restoration, they would be eligible for that reduction in the littorals. So they would be required to do the restoration of that farm field in order to get the reduced littorals. If they were not to do the farm field restoration, they would have to meet the 30%.
And if I could, it's on the screen now. If you just look at paragraph C, that creates an opportunity because we are creating listed species habitat in addition to wading bird habitat. But the reason we have that language in there is it's actually more restrictive because it requires us to do it in one or more larger littoral planting areas, and it specifically excludes the two large existing earth mining lakes because they have their own restoration plans.
Okay, so there's in order to get that reduction, you have to create some other.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. It says create, enhance, or restore habitat for other listed species in a location and amount mutually agreeable to the applicant in Collier County, which I believe we agree.
All right, now I get it. Okay, thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
That's okay.
You already interrupted at appropriate time. Are you at a stopping point for?
Yeah,
me to
I
give
think so.
Terry a break?
Yeah.
You okay with that? Let's do it. 10:42, we'll be back in 10 minutes. That was an appropriate interruption.
Chair, you have a live mic.
Yes, if everybody would please migrate back to their seats. Ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Oh, you know what? I'm done with coffee for now. All right, Bob, if you would like to continue.
We're at a point where, I mean, I did a summary presentation. I think maybe if you, I know you'll have some specific questions, so we'll see if we can't answer those for you.
Okay. Well, I don't have anybody. Does anybody have any? I have a couple of questions that I'd like to ask. My question, you want me to wait till you're done with your happy coffee cake? Commissioner Saunders, do you have any questions of the applicant before I go, or you want me to go first?
The only question I have is going to be dealing with the communication we got from Brad Cornell concerning the wildlife corridor. And Mr. Chairman, I understand from your comment earlier that something has been worked out there. That's my issue, and hopefully that can be addressed.
And for the record, Rich Ivanovich, I'm not familiar with what correspondence that may be, but
let me clarify it for you. In the transmittal hearing and the map that was shown, there was a wildlife corridor with a wildlife crossing. And I want to see that wildlife corridor and crossing is going to be maintained as was proposed and accepted in the transmittal hearing.
What you saw at the transmittal hearing was the proposed PUD master plan should those items come concurrently. One of the conditions in your staff report is that wildlife corridor be addressed when the PUD, if a PUD comes back for consideration by the Board of County Commissioners. So that will be a requirement that we address that.
There's no
at
if.
the PUD.
If
we come at a PUD.
Well, and that's one of my questions, Rich, and I said this to you, I said it to Dawn. I don't want you, there's a reason why someone's asking for a choice between the village and the other proposition that's here. There's a reason for that choice. And if this isn't coming back for an approval by an MPUD, then we don't have the capacity of protecting the wildlife corridor and the crossing. That was one of the precedents for the acceptance. The other question that I have is the transportation aspect of it. I saw language specifically in the village prospect with regard to the new Immokalee Road. I want to make sure, I call it the new Immokalee Road. That's the one where we call that the new Immokalee Road. And so I want to ensure that we've got provisions from a transportation perspective for the corridor or for the right-of-way for that new Immokalee Road, its construction as well, and the intersection improvements for both. If this project isn't coming back for an MPUD, then there are circumstances that need to be addressed today.
Okay. This is the reason we're here now without the PUD is because all of the additional requirements associated with a village at this point makes the project not financially feasible as a village. We don't want to abandon hope on maybe doing the village if costs come down for potentially doing the village, because we have to do commercial, we have to do this bisecting road, we have to do affordable housing. All of those things come with a village. If we were to go under today's land development code requirements, which we're allowed to do, if we somehow don't get this growth management plan amendment through, the only option we'll have is to develop under the existing land development code, which would be at a density of about 2,000 units at one per acre. But we would not have to commit to all of that commercial. We would not have to commit to affordable housing, and we would not have to commit to build that road, the new Immokalee Road. Trinity has the ability to get that right-of-way because it's in her long-range plan, and I may have the wrong terminology, but it's in her plan to do that new Immokalee Road. But as a village, we build 2 of the 4 lanes. All of those costs right now and the difficulty in actually finding the TDRs makes a village today not feasible. That's why you do not have the PUD as a companion item. We had to go through with the Growth Management Plan Amendment now because under the larger scale Growth Management Plan amendments, you have to have your adoption hearing within a period of time after the state review occurs. We've already gotten a couple of extensions. We're past the extension period. That's why we brought forward the GMP today with the hope someday we'll come back and do a PUD. And at that PUD stage, we will address the wildlife corridor, which we would not have to address today as part of the Land Development Code provisions. There is also a question about whether the agencies themselves even want this interconnection to occur, because it will be introducing certain species, one through the old, crossing the old Immokalee Road, then crossing the new Immokalee Road, and sending them into the estates. Some of the agencies don't think that's a good idea, to be introducing panthers and other animals into a part of the estates that's now being populated with homes. So we thought it was better to leave that discussion to the PUD stage and not have it as a commitment today in the growth management plan amendment. We cannot commit, and we will not commit to including that as a requirement in the GMP today. We would prefer to do that at the PUD when we have an actual site plan and we have further along in our permitting with the agencies so we can properly address those comments then. So I hope that's telling you why we're doing what we're doing and why some of these commitments will put us over the top and we won't have the ability to do a village. We'll just develop under the existing Land Development Code. So we'd like to stay with the potential of doing a village and bring back a PUD if the finances change. And I think staff would like us to try to do a village as well, to bring commercial to that area and reduce trips west into the urban area.
Know the benefit. Commissioner Taylor.
So they found panthers in Port Royal years ago, swam across from Key Wayne. So the idea of a wildlife corridor suddenly exposing Golden Gate to all these not so welcome beasts.
They're already there.
They're there, yeah. And I believe the governor has just given several $1 million for the establishment of a wildlife corridor. So it's clear that Governor DeSantis's priorities are backed by a significant amount of money to develop this wildlife corridor through Florida.
But not in this specific location.
Not in this specific location. So I'll look forward to hearing from, our Audubon folks and Florida wildlife folks about this issue. But so I understand, I mean, you've been very forthcoming about why you want the option, village or no village. But why has that got anything to do with us?
Well, because the only way I could do a village is to amend the growth management plan that would allow me to do the village. If I don't amend the growth management plan under the current village criteria, it doesn't work at all. You don't have a single village that has come forward in the rural fringe mixed use district that's different than a rural land stewardship area. You were supposed to have villages in where Bonita Bay, now Ronto, that was supposed to be a village. Too expensive under the existing criteria to do a village, so they developed under the existing Land Development Code. Where we're located, supposed to be a village. If it made sense to be a village under the existing Land Development Code, we would have brought that village forward. So we're bringing to you proposed amendments to the village criteria that make the village possible. Now, remember, we started this process a few years ago before the skyrocketing costs of construction and other things. So that's a factor, I guess, fortunately for us, that happened before we got to the adoption stage. So that's why we're tinkering with and modifying the village criteria so that you could potentially have a village. So that's what it has to do with you.
Okay. So I don't know if we spoke about this. I understand the littoral issue, and I'm comfortable with that. I'm still, hesitating about, but I mean, in a sense, you're giving us choices, but it's not real choices. if we want the possibility of a rural village with affordable housing and the commercial, then we need to amend the GMP. If we don't amend it, which gives you the control, right, village or no village, then you've got the control anyway. So it's really not much of a choice. It's a process we're going through.
Well, you could say no. You
But if
could
we say no, then it's clear if you go forward with development today, the costs are not correct for your business model. And I respect that that's not a criticism.
No, we have, right now, we have no choice. Our only choice today, if we don't amend the growth management plan, is develop under the existing land development code. We're asking you to give us an opportunity to potentially bring a village and bring that PUD associated with that. Because we're telling you right now, and history has shown you, that the existing provisions in the land development code and the growth management plan will not result in a property owner bringing forward a village within the rural fringe mixed use district.
Okay, so the final one is, I'm not happy with the way you defined affordable housing. I think we should use affordable housing. I don't like the limitations of 80 to 120,000 or percent of the mean. I'd like to widen that a little bit, but I'm only one person up here.
I don't know what widen means. Do I get rid of 140?
I think 60 to 120, or I wouldn't go 40, maybe 60% of the average median.
Commissioner, if you all elect to put a range of 60 to 120, that'll be a factor that will decide whether or not to come forward in the future with a PUD to do a village. That's, I mean, right now, the reason the 80 to 120 was in there, because that's what the Planning Commission recommended, that would be arranged for people to be served, and the specifics of what categories would be served, and the number of units in each of those categories would be decided, and the location of those units would all be decided at the PUD.
Okay.
It's a range. If you want to lower the range, it'll be a factor that we'll factor in, because my guess is, and I don't know what the commission will decide at that time, if they decide to impose a 60% or less, we'll have to evaluate that at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Would you please, somebody, Bob, or you, put up the two choices with the rural village and or not, with the ramification, the two choices that you're proposing today. If we amend the GMP and allow for the option of a rural village or not.
You want the TDR calculation we showed?
Yes, that was the
I don't know what's going on right here.
That's it.
Yeah, it's right here. Is it up? Well, it's a black screen.
And I didn't mean to interrupt, Commissioner Taylor. Are you okay for now?
After you no, that's a good thing to do. And then I have one more
Okay.
thing that I want to bring Mr.
Commissioner, is that what you had in mind?
Yes.
Thanks, Troy.
Thank you. And go ahead, Commissioner Taylor.
Okay, it's not to do that, but or maybe it's Ms. Scott, because I want to confirm that is the Spine Road referred to in Mr. Mulhare's presentation the same new Immokalee Road? Is that one and the same?
Yeah, if we were to do a PUD, the Spine Road is the same as New Immokalee Road.
Okay,
No.
all right.
I'm calling Trinity. I just gave her the.
It's
just gave her
one
the
and
sign.
it's all in one, right? It's the same.
It's the
thing.
same thing.
Okay.
It's the same thing, yes.
Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
So if we let you get this, if we agree to the amendment, then we get the Spine Road. If we don't, we don't.
If we don't build a village, we don't build a Spine Road.
We can contribute to it.
We let the county come by the right-of-way.
So I definitely think we need to hear from Ms. Scott on this one.
Good morning, Trinity Scott, Transportation Management Services Department Head. In either event, we will be reserving the right-of-way for New Immokalee Road, AKA Spine Road, whatever it is. It is identified in your long-range transportation plan. When you were seated in this same room as your MPO board, you adopted that long-range transportation plan with that roadway corridor in there, which then allows my staff to be able to work with the developments as they come forward to reserve that right-of-way as necessary. Now, with a village road and the spine road, based on their own internal traffic, they will have to build 2 lanes of that 4-lane roadway to accommodate their own traffic. And then we will work with them through a developer agreement that would be a companion item coming through to be able to perhaps have them go ahead and build those extra lanes for credits or for other payments.
If you want that spine road, all right, the way to do it is do it now as a condition of this approval. And if you were going to go that route, I would suggest you set the purchase price as to what the land is worth now, rather than after all these entitlements are granted.
That's a twist.
To what? I mean, are we talking about as part of the village?
No, as part of the approval of your request.
Well, let me make sure I have to break this down to understand what just happened.
So
Let me ask the question. If it's going to be a condition of our being able to develop under the existing land development code provisions, that we also have to build a spine road, is that what you're suggesting, Mr. Klatzko?
No, what I'm suggesting is you have an application before the board can, as a condition to the application, at this point in time, resolve the issue of the spine road.
And what I'm asking is for the clarification under, is it under, if I want to just do a 2,000 unit land development code requirement, I'm going to have to also do a spine road, or if it's only...
No, you're not doing the spine road. We're doing the spine road, but we're reserving the ability to purchase it at today's prices, not the prices 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road.
Mr.
Rich, we do this all the time.
Jeff, but there's 2 different scenarios here. I mean, you already have the ability today
Correct.
to reserve the right-of-way.
The right-of-way is reserved
Right.
today, if I'm not
Right.
mistaken, in either case. If I heard Trinity say that, the right-of-way is in fact reserved in either case. In the village case, they build 2 of the 4 potential lanes.
Just for clarification, Mr. Chairman, the roadway itself, the specific area for the right-of-way reservation is not dedicated as of right now. It is not reserved. However, with the next development order that would come in for the parcel, whether that be for a village or for a non-village, staff would work with the applicant to reserve that right-of-way at that time. That is what we have historically worked through. Typically, you would see a PUD that comes in as a companion, and Mr. Yovanovitch talked about that. That would have probably worked out some of these kinks, but yes, in either event, whether it's a village or non-village, my staff and I will be working with the applicant to reserve the necessary right-of-way for a 4-lane facility to connect Immokalee Road to Immokalee Road for the new Immokalee Road.
Right. And I don't think at this particular time, I mean, but personally anyway, we've all decided that having that new Immokalee Road is an okay thing. If in fact the village goes forward. But if we don't do the village, you're still, the contribution of the right-of-way along the old Immokalee Road, that's still part of the non-village?
No,
No.
sir.
Can I want to ask?
Okay. Commissioner Taylor, you're still
Well,
up, and then I'll come to you, Castro.
As a point of historical information, I would remind my colleagues that we had an RLSA development that we assumed there would be a contribution from the developer to build a road, and they changed their minds. So
Which one was that?
Oh, we don't want to go there.
Yeah, nor do I, and I
don't either.
I would suggest, and they were within their right to do it.
I don't remember, I haven't done every RLSA program out there, but I've done all of them, and yeah, I guess I have.
Let's stay in the
So
RF.
I don't remember that.
We've got enough to discuss trying to separate between the RLSA and the rural fringe mixed use district. So let's stay here.
Okay, so Mr. Klatzkow, you're suggesting that as much as we legally can, you're shaking your head, so I'm going to turn this over to you.
What I'm saying is, if you want the spine road, irrespective of if it's a village or not a village, Okay, now is the time to make that as a condition of this approval. They may not accept it, but, and may walk away, but if you want that spine road, now is the time to get it, and I would suggest you get it at today's fair market value, rather than fair market value down the road.
Okay.
Thank
And
you.
And I may be able to make this a lot simpler, just to clarify. Commissioner Taylor, I don't mean to interrupt you. Did
No,
you
no,
have another
I am finished now. so-
Okay. Commissioner LaCastro?
I mean, just in simplistic terms, if we approve the village, then the applicant, the developer, has more of a responsibility for that road. And if we don't approve the village, then you don't, correct? I mean, I'm just simplifying. I mean, there's a lot of stuff flying around here, but in layman's terms, that's basically it. Village, more responsibility on you financially for the road. If we don't, then you'll go by sort of normal processes and procedures, and you make no volunteer. You don't volunteer making any sort of investment in the road, where the village, that's a condition that's in the package.
That is
Right.
absolutely correct.
And we go from 2,000 units to 4,000 units.
Right. Yeah, that's the trade-off. That's the trade-off.
And 400 affordable housing units from zero.
Yeah, that was the second part of my question. I think it's important to sort of summarize. Village, these are the things that are under there. It's more financial responsibility for the road. A village is certainly different than just sort of building housing, right? So it's more of a mixed use. It has affordable housing in it, a bunch of other things. If we don't approve any of that, then we get just sort of a normal development, which doesn't have all of those I won't say extras or enhancements. It's arguable if those are extras or enhancements, but those additional things on the list, correct?
Correct.
And that's what we're trying to, that's what's up for debate today.
Correct.
If we're going to allow you to move forward with the village and the list that goes with it, or non-village and the shorter list that goes with it.
And when you
Right.
come back for the non-village, you still have to do a PUD or plat.
I plat.
Sure. Plat.
I plat.
At which point, we have little to no negotiating power with regard to how and what you do.
Correct.
Commissioner Saunders?
Just a quick question, and if you do not do a village, but you do the non-village approach under the current LDC, what happens to the wildlife corridor that we're talking about?
You don't get it.
Okay, so that would go away.
And yes.
All right. And you're going to have to come back with a PUD?
Correct. If we do the village.
If you do a village, and that will require 4 votes?
Correct.
As well, is that correct?
If they come back, yes.
Come back. Well, I mean, if this is approved today and they want to do a village, they have to come back.
Correct.
Yes, but you've already said they presently cannot do
No,
it.
I understand they may not do a village. It
Yes.
may not be economically
4 votes.
feasible. But if they move that way, they have to come back, and we can address the wildlife corridor at that time.
Correct.
If we don't approve this, then they do a non-village, and we don't have to talk about wildlife corridors because it just simply goes away,
Nor the road.
which would not be, that issue would not be in front of us,
Correct.
Correct.
which I think would not be a good result. And I'll look to Brad Cornell and all, I mean, I would like to hear from them at some
course.
point before.
Oh, we
this.
will. We'll get to them when we get, I'm assuming they're listed. on-
And I'd like to hear from staff as well in terms of just the overall planning for that area as to why the village would be beneficial versus the
goodness.
non-village.
That
Just
was
want to
one
get that
of
on the
the-
record. I understand, Mr. Chairman, but I just want to hear
Yes,
that
sir,
from staff.
yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. Commissioner Taylor?
No, I was going to agree with my colleague, Commissioner Saunders. I think it's time to hear from Mr. Bosey if the chair is willing to bring him up.
Well, before you leave, just, where's the picture of the proposed rural village as it's being proposed now with the lake where the wildlife corridor used to be?
You mean the PUD master plan?
Sir?
An outdated PUD master plan? That's
The outdated PUD master plan, correct, yes. Well, right, and then that's track B up there. There, right.
Track B would be,
Correct.
I think is what some people would like to see become a wildlife corridor.
And did I hear, well, and did I hear you say that you are not today going to commit to the wildlife corridor or the road?
As part of a
PUD, as part
we
of
will
a
agree to-
transmittal hearing for the GMP amendment, did I hear you say you are not committing to the wildlife corridor or the road?
The road is already a requirement. The wildlife corridor, we're not committing to. We're already required to do a road. We'll work with Trinity as to the exact location of it.
Gotcha.
But the wildlife corridor, we would like to address
At the
PUD stage and
if
not
in
today.
fact you come forward
come
with the
back.
village, and if you don't do the village, then you're not required to do a PUD, and again, as Commissioner Saunders already said, you're not required to do the corridor or the crossing.
Correct.
Commissioner Taylor, you got another question?
No, I just think we need to hear from Mr. Bosey regarding the wildlife corridor.
Okay, very good, thank you, Rich. Yep.
Mike Bosey, Planning and Zoning Director, and I will get to the wildlife corridor in a second. Just to remind at the very beginning, this requires four affirmative votes because you are amending the growth management plan. You are within it. There's two specific ordinances. One, an ordinance for the future land use element, which contains the most of the rural village modifications, amendments, and then the CCME, which we've spoken about, the littoral planting. Those are the two elements of the GMP that you're being asked to amend. One of the most important things I think that has to be recognized of why the option of the rural village has value to the county. One, it closes the loop on the Hussey settlement. That Hussey settlement was a long time in the making. It does require that the 578 acres be designated sending land as an offset to the exchange for the receiving lands that the Hussey received as part of that settlement. So this closes the loop. It closes it completes the transaction that was mediated through the court system related to the Hussey settlement.
1 second. If we don't approve the GMP amendment, what happens to the settlement doesn't change?
Settlement doesn't change.
Correct.
Staff then has to work with the applicant to initiate a growth management plan amendment to redesignate the 578 acres within their property. The specifics of that, I couldn't tell you exactly the ins and outs, but that's what we would have to take up. As well as the benefit, of course, the 400 units for affordable housing would be something that the village would be able to provide for compared to the non-residential or to the platting option. A second or another sits within what was proposed as part of the rural fringe mixed-use district amendments that we didn't move forward at transmittal. We held back based upon recommendations from the Planning Commission, but that's economies of scale. And what does that mean, economies of scale? Well, at 1 unit per acre, the amount of commercial square footage that could be supported by this development is going to be somewhat limited. Within the village allowances, they're allowed to ask for up to 3 units per acre. And those 3 units per acre starts to add the economies of scale towards where the commercial can be supported in a wider manner, meaning that more goods and services, more economic opportunities would be available within the village area. One of the things I think that they've stated on the record was there's the amount of commercial that is required from the village based upon the amount of commercial that's entitled within this area, which is a significant amount. Staff recognizes that, and with Brightshore and SRA that's going to be coming up in future meetings as well, there is a lot, over millions of square foot of commercial allocation within this general area. So the more economies of scale, the more density that we can get to be able to support those commercial ventures only helps the long-term transportation network of the amount of in the variety of commercial that could be developed within the area that we know will be able to serve those estates lots as well. And as far as the wildlife corridor, part of the recommendation from the Planning Commission and staff's recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, and I think it's been alluded to from Mr. Yovanovich, will be addressed at the MPUD. But what I will say is if they would go the plat route, before they would be in that development order, Ms. Cook's team would say, all right, show me your your federal permits. So if the federal agencies thought that the large mammal corridor was the appropriate location and area, that would be an ask. So I'm not sure if if we would go to the plat and not go through the rural village. I don't know if that goes away. I just don't know what the perspective of the federal agencies are regarding that large mammal corridor.
I think the decision, my concern would be the decision's not with this board then, it's with the federal agencies making a call as to whether or not that was a plausible path for those creatures to move to and through.
Agreed. What I will say that the Planning Commission heard this back in August, unanimously recommended approval with the 5 individual conditions that are contained within your executive summary. Staff is still recommending approval. I think the option to potentially have that mixed-use PUD has value. They can move forward with the LDC process as it exists. It does complicate the issue because we will have to defer to the federal agencies, as the chair had said. We'll have to construct all of that spine road on our own dollar. Whereas if it was the village, there's a cost sharing that goes associated with it. So there are some advantages of leaving that door open, but I also understand the Board of County Commissioners would like more specificity at this stage, and unfortunately, with only having the GMP in place, there's more. There's less that you guys have control over because we're not at the zoning stage as well. But overall, staff is recommending approval, subject to the conditions that were contained, and would be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Technically, we are at the zoning stage. If we approve the GMP amendment, we are at the zoning stage for a non-village or a village. So technically, we are at the zoning stage. If they choose to not do the village, then the benefits associated with the village approval don't come forth.
Oh, yes.
They are today approved without even talking to us for a non-village per right that they currently have, which is plus minus 2,000 units.
Correct. And the one thing I will say, the one benefit either or in the village, there was 750 to 1250 TDRs that were going to be required for consumption. The non-village option was 11,420. 1,100, I'm sorry, thank you. Either way, it's a tremendous advancement of the Rural Fringe Mixed Use District program because of that type of a consumption. We have not seen that level of consumption of TDRs, and the process has been around for close to 19 years. And I don't disagree with council when he states there was 4 receiving areas. Each one of those receiving areas were encouraged to have a village development, and the market has not responded. I think the availability of TDRs and the cost of acquisitions of TDRs is something that is still problematic from a regulatory standpoint. And part of what we're going to be doing when we bring back the Rural Fringe Mixed Use District amendments is updating the estimation of the number of credits that are in the system, the number of credits that are going to be demanded of the system. And I think that will be informative to this very issue of what steps we probably need to take to increase the liquidity of TDRs to make this program move forward in a little bit more proactive fashion.
And the development criterion within the village. That was one of the prohibiting factors from the inception of the Rural Fringe Mixed Use District. There was a considerably higher expense associated with within the described development criterion. So, okay. I don't have anybody else lit up. Anybody else have a question before we go to public comment? Yeah, all set? All right, let's do it. Let's do the public comment, Troy.
Mr. Chair, we have 7 registered speakers today. Your first speaker is Brad Cornell, and he will be followed by Meredith Budd. I'd like to encourage the speakers to use both podiums and queue up, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Brad Cornell, and I'm here on behalf of Audubon Western Everglades and Audubon, Florida. Thanks for the opportunity to address you on this project. Audubon Western Everglades and Audubon, Florida have met with the developers' representatives, with your staff, and with you over the last 2 years to talk about the comings and goings of this project. That resulted in our provisional support for the board's transmittal of the Immokalee Road Rural Village overlay in March of 2021. And that was largely because in that version, which I've shared with you, maps of that conceptual master plan for the village, they had committed to, and in our meetings with them, they had committed to protecting an existing large mammal wildlife corridor that went between Bird Rookery Swamp, Horsepen Strand, and the Crew Lands to the north. That earned Audubon's support for that large portion of this project. That's a preserve across the entire top of the project. A few months after that, the project concept changed. They changed their development proposal and took that out and put development in a large lake in the way of that large mammal corridor. And we saw that as basically a bait and switch. You've taken away, from our perspective, one of the most important elements for wildlife and the ecology and environment of this region. Now, I want to point out the consultants have said, the applicant has said that they don't like the wildlife corridor because it's going to be introducing wildlife, panthers and bears, into Golden Gate Estates. But that's not true. Those animals are already there. They are already using this corridor and this connection. So that's no introduction. That's what we're looking for, is protection of an existing large mammal movement corridor. And the agencies recognize that. Both the state and the federal agencies, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, do support the protection of this corridor. We've met with both of those agencies, and that is the current position of them. So, and one other thing I want to point out is that this is not a question of financial feasibility, protecting this wildlife corridor. So I'm not sure why the applicant is reluctant to make that commitment to you today. It doesn't have to do with financial feasibility. And one other thing, there is a local Collier County interest in this. You currently have been buying through your Conservation Collier program, including more parcels that are going to show up on your later agenda today for Cycle 11A. You have been buying parcels in the Horsepen Strand. That's part of this corridor. So we support protecting that as part of this process. Thank you.
Question for him before I cut him loose? Commissioner Saunders?
I think no, I don't have a question at this point. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
I just wanted we can always bring him back if we need him.
Your next speaker is Meredith Budd. She'll be followed by Matthew Shantz.
Good morning, Commissioners. Meredith Budd on behalf of the Florida Wildlife Federation. So in order to not try to be not duplicative of Brad's statements, the Federation was also supportive at the transmittal hearings under the understanding that the applicant had been communicating with our groups, putting forth a conceptual plan that maintained a wildlife movement corridor, and that was something we were very supportive of. I want to also express the same sentiment that it didn't feel good when we stood up here and supported a transmittal document and then see the conceptual site plan change, and then especially moving into this hearing, there was no communication between the applicants and the Florida Wildlife Federation. And I can't speak necessarily on behalf of Audubon, but I don't believe with Audubon either in advance of this hearing. That was disappointing. We did really appreciate the coordinated effort in the previous transmittal hearings. I do want to point out that the receiving and sending lands as part of this project are part of a settlement agreement, and they are not necessarily identified because of their environmental value. So if you look at the overall overall aerial view of the site plan, you'll notice that where the corridor is, where that new area that was put in after the fact, is actually pretty wet. And so when you go through Section 7, I would love for the county to be able to take a stronger stance and be able to maintain a corridor over time. But I believe that based on the ground cover and the opinions of the agencies that would be a very difficult spot to put development in if you were to go that route. I do want to note too, I heard today that the applicant says that the agencies don't support protecting the corridor. I have emails that I've provided to the applicant, and I'm happy to provide it each and every one of you from FWC and from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service stating the value of protecting the corridor and that the previous site plan was preferred over the new version of the site plan. So I'm not quite sure what agency folks the applicant was speaking with. The ones that we've spoken to that are local to this area and that know panther and bear issues certainly were supportive of the corridor. Just to reiterate from the transmittal hearing so you have a better understanding of what FWF is really looking for, it's just to maintain wildlife movement. There's wildlife moving through that area regardless right now. We're not introducing wildlife by having this corridor in place. When we spoke with the applicant previously, they had spoken about maintaining the corridor, crossing structure on the internal road. And then I also want to elevate just to the county. I know this is not the direct obligation of just the applicant, but the north-south segment of Immokalee Road is a hotspot for wildlife mortality.
It goes slow.
So
you
sorry.
You're talking too fast because you're inside your 30 seconds, and poor Terry's over here spinning.
So sorry. The north-south segment of Immokalee Road is a hotspot for wildlife mortality, panthers and bears. So if and when there's a road widening, I think the county has an obligation to work with the applicant, work with the agencies to implement wildlife crossing structure on that north-south segment to limit wildlife mortality, not just for the benefit of wildlife, but for human safety concerns as well. So I think that this would be appropriate to come back with the PUD companion. Thank you so much.
And if I'm not mistaken, just on that point, the village concept has a contribution of right-of-way along Immokalee Road, if I'm not mistaken. Trinity's saying yes. There is I think 100-foot swath on the old Immokalee Road that goes up through there that is a contribution from the developer should they go forward with the village, which would allow us to address some of those mortality issues that you're talking about.
Thank you.
I had a question for her.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. Meredith, come on back. I missed Commissioner LaCastro. How could I do that?
Because you're always ignoring me. No, I'm just kidding. I'm okay with it. Wait till I become chair in January and see what happens. Meredith, just so I have it clear, because you and Brad both came to see me, and I assume all the other commissioners as well. And these aren't my words, but to simplify the question, Brad's saying the bait and switch, the two different maps. What you contend is the natural corridor that currently exists is used aggressively by wildlife. The corridor that they're going to, quote, sort of replace it with is not one that would have that same sort of use. It's in the wrong spot or maybe a variety of things. Can you tell me the difference between the two and why, I understand your contention that there was sort of a change and maybe you weren't privy to it. Like you said, there was no communication is what you're saying. What's the difference between the two? So it's not a one for one in your mind. It is a big difference in location, use, advantageous, location to current wildlife.
Yes, so the change that has come forth on preliminary site plans, the one that was most recently submitted to the county, it has a development pod and a large stormwater body of water that would block the wildlife corridor. It would sever that corridor. So it would basically, what would cause is basically a little roundabout for wildlife. So you're next to Bird Rookery Swamp. You're going to have wildlife coming into this village footprint. But what ends up happening is when there's no escape valve, right? There's nowhere for them to go. They're just going to get stuck in this area of the ascending lands in the north of the property, and they're going to either cause wildlife conflict within the village or in the immediate housing area to the Corkscrew neighborhood to the north, and have to cross Immokalee Road again, which is another barrier for wildlife movement. That development pod in the water body that's now blocking it, if that wasn't there, it actually provides a release valve for wildlife. So as they come in, they can actually enter into Horsepen Strand and move on north into northern conservation lands. And that's the opinion of technical experts and the opinion of the agencies that we have provided to the applicant.
When you saw those changes and you didn't hear from the applicant or they didn't talk with you first, is your contention, did you, and I know you can't speak for the Audubon Society, but I'm sure you know the answer to this, did either of the environmental agencies reach reach out and say, wow, we just got a new set of maps, and boy, this is a pretty big, important, change for us. Let's talk about it. And if you did do that, then you didn't hear back. There was no contact.
If I remember correctly, I received the comments from FWC when I reached out to them, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and our technical expert, who's a wildlife transportation ecologist at a university, and I provided that expertise to the applicants. So sorry, I'm going so fast.
Yes, you are.
I provided that expertise to the applicants, and I think I received an email saying, thank you, we'll look at it, but I don't recall a follow-up conversation or any follow-up that, obviously led to any changes in the site plan.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And just as a point of clarification, they're not stuck in there. If for some reason this project doesn't come forward with the village concept, the animals have been traversing through there since time immemorial, and providing for this corridor and the wildlife crossing does enhance the capacity to get over into another residential area, though rurally densely populated. It is Golden Gate Estates, and then to get it back up through and into where you're talking about, into that other environmentally sensitive area, up into the cruise and the sanctuary land, they still got to go back across the old Immokalee Road that's back up in there as well. So just to clarify the point, they're not stuck.
No, they can always go back out into Crew.
And or they can go back across the Immokalee Road and do what we need to do as well. So.
But your point, just as a quick follow-up, is on the current plan, there are things that are built, like you said, maybe they're not stuck. That might be sort of an over-exaggeration, but you're contending that there's things that now have been added in that corridor that would impede a natural flow of the wildlife back and forth, correct?
That's correct,
Okay.
yes.
Because originally, and that's where I had contention, argument, or discussion, is the original map had a corridor through there, and it doesn't now, and there's a pond or a lake structure, which is more prohibitive for the
And
animals.
development in the latest iteration.
Yeah, correct. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Your next public speaker is Matthew Shantz. He'll be followed by Marcella Zarita. Mr. Shantz has been seated 3 additional minutes from Gareth Rockcliffe. Mr. Rockcliffe, can you raise your hand to indicate you're present? There he is. Matthew, you'll have 6 minutes.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon. Are we still afternoon?
Good morning.
I don't know.
Morning.
Good morning. It's Matthew Schwartz, by the way.
Sorry.
I'm glad to hear all this discussion on this property as wildlife habitat, wildlife corridor. I tend to look at it as habitat. There's a reason why this property is so important, and we've seen maps. I'm just going to do it off the top of my head. If you look at the nexus of public lands that surround this particular property, you couldn't find a worse place from the standpoint of protecting our Florida panther than developing this property with 4,000 new homes. If you go to the west, we talked about the Crew lands, Flint Penn Strand, Audubon's Corkscrew Swamp right across the road, right across the north side of Immokalee Road. Go further north, there's Lake Trafford, the Caracara Preserve, the Pepper Ranch Preserve. Go to the south, the Big Cypress National Preserve, Fakahatchee, Picayune, Florida Panther National Wildlife Refuge. And look at where this property is. It's located smack in the middle of this entire complex. They moved through it. The property is right there in the core habitat of the Florida panther, a habitat that is already at max. It's already maxed out. The scientists agree that it couldn't handle any more panthers. And in fact, they're saying the habitat that exists right now, which still does, I mean, we haven't really eaten into eastern Collier that much yet, but we're getting there. That's what's on the verge. And actually, let me talk about that for a minute, because this property is coming in the context of many, many other properties. I actually made a list of what's coming, and we'll get to that real quick. This phone keeps dying on me. It actually keeps closing on me.
It's an iPhone.
It's an iPhone. I have to keep waking it up. Now, where's my photos again?
Galaxy.
Ugh. Come on. Don't do this. There we go. So look what's coming in. 11,000 homes have been approved in Ave Maria. We've got about 4,000 left to go. Rivergrass Village, you've already approved 2,500 homes. Longwater Village, 2,600 homes. Belmar Village, 22,750 homes. Skyscale, that's the Hyde Park, 1,800 homes. Bright Shore, that's on the way. 2,400 homes, by the way, right next to this one, right across Immokalee Road from this one. Immokalee Road Rural Village, 4,000 new homes. And the town of Big Cypress Town Core, 1,382. So we're talking about a gigantic total number of new homes so far. You've already approved the rural land stewardship area. Every time I've come in here to talk about these issues, I try to talk to you about that the Panther cannot handle, all the other wildlife in the area cannot handle this level of development. And you say, well, we're only approving the county comprehensive plan. Is the development consistent with the county's comprehensive plan? The feds, they're the ones who are going to take care of the concerns of the Panther and the other wildlife. They're not here today. Nor, according to Mr. Sabo, did they even submit any comments to you in response to this decision to transmit to DEO. So you had no input whatsoever from the feds on this project. You're hearing from environmentalists, you're hearing from me. I'm also an environmentalist. But you actually did hear from the feds because they wrote a draft biological opinion on the 45,000 acres of development that you folks, that this commission has already approved. And what did they find? They found jeopardy. They found jeopardy for the Florida Panther. It can't handle that much development. That includes the 3 villages, the Rivergrass, et cetera, Belmar, Longwater. That the roadkill, 11 more Panthers per year in a population that could be as low as 120. It can't handle 11 more dead Panthers every year. Habitat loss. This is habitat. It's not just a corridor. It's also habitat. Fragmentation of the habitat. And we already know the deer population in the area is crashing. The deer population of the Big Cypress has crashed. So they found jeopardy. They actually found that this project by itself would not go through. The developers, the folks who also come in here all the time, who represented that HCP, the Eastern Collier Property Owners Association, when they saw where Fish and Wildlife Service was going with it, guess what they did? They dropped out. They quit before the finished document could be signed. They just quit. And the reasons for quitting, they said, oh, you can't look at harm to the Panther. We only wanted a permit for harassment during construction activities. It doesn't work that way. When you build this development, you're putting thousands and thousands of new cars on the road. On a road, and people have pointed that out. Immokalee Road, the west side of this project is primary Panther habitat. The eastern side is secondary Panther habitat. 8 Panthers have been killed on Immokalee Road right alongside this project already. We're going to add 4,000 new homes. So this is going to go because the procedure now is the feds don't approve wetlands permits. Now those 404 permits that used to go through the Army Corps of Engineers required the Fish and Wildlife Service to respond, now go directly to DEP. And DEP is choosing actually to approve most of the stuff. However, they cannot approve a project that will cause jeopardy to the Panther. Whether you approve this or not, the EPA, which oversees this, the federal agency, is going to deny it because it will, combined with the other developments, lead to jeopardy for an endangered species, our state animal. So whatever you do here, know that that's coming down the road. I don't know if you have any questions about this. Thank you.
Your final speaker on this item is Marcella Zarita. She's been seated additional time from Michael Tangeray and from Rayanne Burton, who are both present. She will have 9 minutes.
Hey. All right. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Marcella Zurita. I reside in the rural Golden Gate States, east of Immokalee Road Rural Village. I heard the petitioner representative from the last Planning Commission meeting stating as of right now it is not profitable. And what we're doing right now is making all the changes to make sure it is profitable for the developers.
Young lady, go slow. I know you have 9 minutes, and she's trying to write down what you're saying.
Okay. I'm opposing to the transmitter for the adoption, the amendment of the growth management for the ARFMA district. Comprehensive plans are intended to balance future economic, social, physical, environmental, and fiscal development in a county. The county needs to manage the impact of growth for the benefit of current residents and future generations and the environment. There's no thoughtful analysis of the relationship between environmental protection and economic growth with these changes. The Arfmud district was supposed to protect and preserve existing natural resources, including habitat for listed species, to retain a rural pasture or park-like appearance, and to direct incompatible uses away from wetlands, upland habitat in order to protect the water quality, minimizing
Nice and slow.
minimizing the green belt or having none of the east side is just having some vegetation will not be compatible with the surrounding areas like rural Golden Gate states. You're planning to have a road at the end of my street. We can imagine the noise pollution and contamination and taking the rural character of the Golden Gate states. I'm concerned that increasing density near the sensitive areas like Corkscrew Regional Ecosystem watershed, which provide flood protection water filtration for the county's drinking water supplies, reducing the littoral shelf planting from 30% to 15% of the wet detention pond surface area, it is another blow to our drinking water and sensitive areas. The whole purpose of the littoral zone is to purify the water and maintain balanced aquatic ecosystems. All the scientific agencies dealing with lakes agree that healthy lakes in Florida are covered with 30% and 50% with aquatic plants. As I recall from a presentation from the county staff with the DEP, the reasoning to have 30% compared to other areas in the county, it was because of the sensitive areas. In regards to wildlife, panthers currently move to this area, into Golden Gate states, and to the preserved lands. Increasing more residents within primary and secondary panther habitats, we can expect an increase in domestic animal depredation and human-panther interactions.
Slow, ma'am, young
Sure.
ma'am.
Sorry. This may result in several panthers being permanently removed
Stop
from
one
the
second.
population.
Stop.
Mhm.
You need to slow down.
Okay,
And
sorry.
if you cannot get through your presentation, you can present the balance of it to her, because you have it there
Okay.
in writing and you're whipping through it. I can barely understand what you're saying,
Okay.
let alone her
Sure.
writing down what you're saying. And Troy will restart the clock.
Okay. We have to keep in mind in the current panther habitat, it's a capacity and there's nowhere to relocate these animals. We don't want the panther to become restricted within the preserved boundaries, as this will not promote its recovery. This is an active area for panthers. There is plenty of telemetry points, as we record a total of 381 panthers dead within 25 miles of Immokalee Village site. About 70% were caused by vehicle collision. We asked the county to take in consideration to adopt new policies that where there's a high percentage of panther vehicle collisions occurs, wildlife crossings must be required on any new development. We can't just depend on the state and federal to act, but we should be at the local level as well. It is for the well-being and protection of our wildlife and for future generations and the safety of citizens as well. In regards to corporate tortoise burrows found in the areas, FWC determined that the project may affect the corporate tortoise. Let's also put in consideration the corporate tortoise burrows provide refuge for approximately 360 other species. In regards to affordable housing, workforce housing, some changes need to be made. Some of the current county police don't make that much money to qualify. Trying to promote affordable housing, workforce housing in these areas that we don't even have bus transportation, not to mention the lack of roads and poor conditions, overcrowded schools that now we are bringing portal units. Making all these changes only benefits developers and will be burden to taxpayers. We are still paying 1% penny increase to another couple years. Some of the roads that it's needed for all this development are not even funded yet. What will happen if due to a hurricane or wildfire, residents need to evacuate and failing roads adding the new development density? Golden Gate State residents, like myself, are concerned about the impact of additional traffic loss of rural way of life. Wildlife fatality danger roads and impacts of water resources, decimation on the rural character of Golden Gate States and surrounding areas. Impact fees is insufficient to mitigate the long-term costs. FDOT analysis for asphalt demonstrates the cost of asphalt is growing at 3% per year. Balanced future economic, social, physical, environmental, and fiscal development of the area should guide future decisions on any growth management plan amendments. Commissioner Penny Taylor, I quoted you on an interview back in 2021 when you supported for rivergrass. I don't have it here. That 1 second. It was due to the environment. It was mere concerns about their impact from physical to environmental. This is the same thing that is going on in this area. Commissioner Sanders, now you're part of the Golden Gate States. We do love our low density and the quiet surroundings as well. And I also have a few questions. I've been trying to get the developer agreement contribution. We're only going to get to see if an MPUD application is submitted. But when you look at the South Florida Water Management Permit that they have submitted, as part of their documents, they already have it submitted there as a draft. So it hasn't even come here. We haven't even seen what it is, but it's already submitted as a supporting documentation. Regarding the package transmitter submitted to the DO, some things are being removed, crossed, and one of that came to my concern, it's removing the specific managed practices of the control of pesticides used in golf courses in concern. As an example, 7/21/2011 in Deland, a group of 42 Volusia County homeowners filed a lawsuit against over groundwater pollution. They said the well water at the homes is contaminated with a cancer-causing chemical. Homes with wells that tested positive were closed on the east side of the Gulf area. Please keep in mind the current community that depends on well water near the ARF-MUD district. We have on the DO some of the crossings, like I mentioned. It also mentions the the rural village should not be located any closer than 3.0 miles from another rural village. That's going to be removed, from my understanding. There's another part that the green belt may be concentrated to a greater degree in areas where it is necessary to protect this species habitat, including wetland and uplands, provide for a buffer from enhancing natural reservations, or provide for wealth. And there's certain things, those are the things. Also, I want to point out lastly that, excuse me. The residents of District 5 still don't understand why Commissioner McDaniel is still not recusing himself from voting. The Form AB memorandum voting conflict doesn't say there's only conflict of interest if they still own the land, but states as follows. And also, it's 112.3143 Florida statutes. Any relationship, whether there's a conflict of interest, a situation which regard for a private interest tends to lead to disregard of public duty or interest. And also in the Collier County Ethics Ordinance Statement of Policy states, an individual covered by this article should not use his or her position as a public servant for unlawful gain or enrichment. Avoid conduct that gives the appearance of impropriety in the performance of his or her public duties, and not accept anything of value in the public servant notes or reasonably should have known that it was given with the intent to reward or influence him or her in the performance or non-performance of his or her duty. And the reason why I'm bringing this, because even on the oath that you made on 2020, which is very confusing, you're still listing in the address that you no longer own. Another thing too, when you look at the county business licenses, there is no new license registered for that location, but it's still open with your address, with your information. It is not closed, and it's still, it's just adding up. But those are the things that, it was questionable. And you're still going to have people coming in here and questioning about it. And even on the meeting for 2019, they ask about it, and we don't understand why you're still not recusing yourself from voting. So I respectfully ask you for you to not vote and to recluse yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, having said all that, we have a new weather update, and the storm has shifted south. The surge is projected to be a little bit higher than what was originally prophesied 2 hours ago this morning. So I think we're done with public speakers.
Yes, sir.
We can close the public speaking portion of this hearing at this particular stage. How are you, And I'm looking at the pleasure of my board here. You know, this isn't a unilateral decision. I'm kind of, what do you think, Bert?
I think we can certainly
Commissioner
wrap this
Saunders?
up, and then if we need to adjourn, that's fine, but I think we can wrap this up here in just a couple
Okay.
minutes.
Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up, and then we'll go on from there.
I'll wait to hear what Mr. Yovanovich has to say.
Okay.
Just real briefly, I just want to clarify some things that might have been said by Brad and Meredith, because I've known them for a long time and we've had communication. I don't think they meant to say, maybe they did mean to say there was a bait and switch and there were no communications. Was there a change in the plans? Absolutely. Did we meet with them about those changes in the plans? Absolutely. Do we agree to disagree with what the technical data says? Absolutely. And do they have the right to withdraw their support for the proposed amendment because we've made changes? Absolutely. But I don't want the record to reflect that there have not been communications since the change in the master plan has occurred. So I just wanted to get that on the record. With that, we're hopeful that you will adopt the proposed changes, because it does allow for the potential of a village and further discussion with regard to the wildlife corridor. And with that, that's our request.
I know I've closed the public hearing, but there was a lady that came up to me in the back. Did she not fill out a speaker form? And she has a petition. And I've closed the public hearing, but I know you're here and you've been set. Please come forward and at least turn in your petition, if you would please, to our court reporter.
I think it's on item 11A.
It's on a separate item? Is it on this item or is it on another item? It's on another item. My bad. Forgive me. I thought you were wanting to speak on this one. So we have closed a public hearing on this particular item. So, Commissioner Saunders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been skeptical from time to time on some of the villages. As a matter of fact, on the River of Grass, I think that was mentioned. I voted against that when it came forward, because I wanted the property owners to work out some of the problems and I think they did, that were addressed by, at that time, I think it was the Conservancy. I'm going to make a motion to approve this with some conditions and with a statement of clarification as well. I'm going to make that motion because I think in this particular instance, the village concept is better than simply having development under the LDC. And I know there's a lot of pressure to develop out on individual lots, 5-acre lots, 2.5-acre lots, a tremendous amount of development going out there. And I think that's more destructive of habitat than having these units clustered in this type of development. But the Planning Commission approved this basically with 5 conditions. I'm going to read those and indicate that my motion is conditioned on these conditions and that I will not vote to approve this when it comes back if the wildlife corridor is not addressed. So you need 4 votes now and you need 4 votes then. I don't know when you'll come back, and I don't know if I'll still be here at that time, but if I am, I'm letting you know that I won't support this if it's not addressed properly. The first one is that the MPUD, if submitted, a DCA must be provided to demonstrate acceptable mitigation. If a MPUD is submitted, details for buffer areas are required. If a MPUD is submitted, the location of the 400 affordable units is required. The fourth one, the applicant must address concerns from the Florida Wildlife Federation, and I want to add to that and Florida Audubon regarding path and crossings and wildlife conflicts at the time of rezoning or platting. So that's the issue that we're talking about in terms of the wildlife corridor. The fifth one, staff recommended text changes to the proposed CCME Growth Management Plan amendment language stipulating a PUD rezone or LDC amendment. I'm not sure exactly what that means. And maybe Mr. Bosey can explain that. I can eliminate that from the motion if it's language that doesn't make a whole lot of sense here. But that was a condition of the Planning Commission. Mr. Bosey, is that language that can be clarified here a little bit?
And Mr. Saunders, if I can I ask you a clarifying question on the stipulations after you talk to Mr. Or maybe before he pulls it up. The stipulation with regard to the plat deals with a PUD rezone, not a plat under the current LDC, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, just want to make sure. Okay.
Well, and Mr. Bosey, my question is, just for clarification, what is number 5 trying to address? And can we clarify that?
Thank you. Mike Bosey, zoning director. And you're right, that's a bit of a redundancy. That could be eliminated without any material effect upon what's being proposed. It was just the requirement that either a plat or a PUD would be
The motion that
submitted.
I'm making then with those 4 conditions, you understand that and that's workable. Mr. Bosey? The motion with the 4 conditions is workable for you to work that out once this comes back?
Absolutely, sir.
5 conditions.
Then I'm going to eliminate the 5th condition and make that motion, again, with the admonition that
I have a question.
if things are not worked out properly on the wildlife corridor, I won't be voting to approve this later on.
I think there's 2 of us on that one. Commissioner Solis, are you good, Commissioner? By the way, there's a motion been made with those stipulations. Commissioner Solis.
Second. I'll
And
second
it's been seconded, so.
Mr. Bosey, I just want to make sure that, okay, if this is denied, then the applicant can move forward under the existing land development regulations, plat it, start building houses, no requirement for a corridor, and no requirement for any contribution for the road.
No requirement for any contribution to the road. The road is dedicated. I mean, the acquisition process will have to go through the normal process. The corridor, that's up to the feds.
Okay.
They
But
may
it's up to
impose
the
it,
feds.
but yeah.
We have
and he
no
can-
control over that.
No control over that. If they move forward under the LDC, what they would have to do before they could move forward is secure enough TDRs. But that would be the only additional requirement.
The alternative is if it's approved, then that opens up the possibility for a village or development under the land development code as it is now.
Correct. They
If
could.
there's a village, then there's a requirement to build the road and a whole bunch of other things.
Correct.
Commercial and other things.
Road.
And they would have to come back for a PUD, which then the board, I think there's at least 3, it sounds like, would, at least 3 that would require the corridor.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So, okay, I mean, this is not that difficult.
No, if you don't approve, they have one option.
Right.
If they approve, they have 2 options, and that second option is something I think that is more favorable to the county.
Right.
If that would come about.
If we take away the options, then we just have one bad option. In my,
I'm not sure if there's some benefits with that option. Like I said, it was
less
tremendously
beneficial
advanced,
option.
yet less beneficial.
I wouldn't call it a bad option. Just is.
okay,
You good?
I'm good.
Commissioner LaCastro.
Mr. Schwartz spoke very eloquently and passionately about wildlife at the podium, and he concluded his comments by saying if we went forward with, it's Schwartz, right, sir? Yep.
It is Schwartz.
He concluded his comments by saying if we went forward with the village, that we're going to have all kinds of legal issues with the EPA and other agencies that are going to come at us because of, panther, infringing on panther habitat. What's your comment to that? Because I don't have, expertise or knowledge in there, but is that a concern? Is that possible? I mean, he obviously felt pretty definite about it.
The growth management plan defers to the state and feds when we're talking about listed species. And we don't have the staff to have that level of technical expertise. We defer to the feds in the state related to these issues. Their conclusions and their ultimate requirements of a development is going to be what that is, regardless of what our individual environmental staff may have a perspective on.
Right.
But they will impose what they feel is appropriate based upon the conditions that are being suggested.
So what he said isn't untrue. They could challenge anything, any type of development that we have.
If what he was saying is true, then I would imagine that the permit requirements from U.S. Fish and Wildlife will be rather demanding.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Taylor.
Yes, I wondered if the motion maker would consider adding to his stipulations what was brought forward by our county attorney in terms of if the road goes forward, there is a reserving of the cost of the land if we indeed have to buy it with today's prices, not
No.
3 years or 4 years from now.
I guess I would have to ask the county attorney what our normal course of business is in terms of dealing with that type of issue. I understand the valuation today versus the valuation a year from now, which quite frankly, the valuation may be less than it.
I was just going to say, I mean, if we go picking the price today.
What do we normally?
Historically, we've tried to reserve the right-of-way at today's costs to the extent that we can.
Historically, my recollection is that we have a contract price or a price per acre that's delineated in the agreement, not at market.
Mr. Yovanovich, what's your, I don't have an issue with doing that, Commissioner Taylor, but
No, I'm
don't wanna-
curious, is there a set price within the contract?
No, what, the way the DCA is currently drafted, and most of the DCAs I've ever worked on, says, should we come forward with a developer agreement, it is, you get an appraisal, and the appraisal is based upon prior to the entitlement value. That's what the DCA would say if we came forward with the PUD, and I think that's the typical process, and I think we should stick with that as a typical process instead of now trying to impose a price if we go under the rights we currently have, which is to develop under the LDC.
Okay.
So I prefer we go with typical operating procedure.
Ms. Scott, if you could agree or disagree with what Mr. Yovanovich just said? And
Once
tell us-
again, for the record, Trinity Scott, Transportation Management Services Department Head. Yes, that's typically what we do, is that we reserve, we will do 2 appraisals for the pre-entitled property value, so before the PUD would, looking at that date before, and then we average those, and then that's typically what we do. We have in other instances worked out a per acre cost ahead of time. We have not had those conversations with this applicant at this time.
Well, Commissioner Taylor, I think I'd like to keep it kind of the way it is, what our normal procedures, when they come back for the PUD, if there's we should have that price, I guess, figured out at that point. And if we don't, then, you may not get your votes. So
Commissioner, we've done it both ways. We've tried to agree on a price. Sometimes staff says they want to go get 2 appraisals, or they'll take, here's what we're getting ready to sell it for, use that number. But we've done it both ways, and we can try to work out a price in the DCA.
All right. Then I'll just keep it the way it is.
Okay, appreciate that.
Commissioner LaCastro.
I know we got a motion and a second on the floor here, but I'm also hearing a bunch of things that, I mean, if this was a normal meeting and we weren't, and I don't feel like we're artificially rushed, but there's a lot happening right now outside this building that has changed the hurricane. I just throw this out there to get your comments. Are we at a point where we feel confident for a vote or very close to it? Or have we heard a bunch of things that have caused us to pause and question and want to talk more to the environmental folks and really get the details from Mr. I mean, this is a huge project. So, I mean, I feel like I've gotten my questions answered, but I'm just curious from my colleagues if this one is heavy and big enough that we're sitting here making a big major decision. And, right now we've got, hundreds of thousands of people in Collier County right now that are doing a whole lot because the storm has actually shifted. Thoughts?
My thoughts?
Yes, sir.
And I haven't spoken yet. My thoughts are Commissioner Saunders is right on track with what it is we're doing. I don't feel rushed. And folks need to hear this. If we don't approve this project, they don't have an opportunity to do the village. And the village comes with a PUD where we have to talk about the wildlife crossing. We have to talk about the wildlife corridor. We have to talk about the restoration that's going to go on in the and additional habitat creation that's going to go on in the northwest end. We have a commercial of up to 350,000 square feet to help support the community. That's infrastructure that comes to help the support. We have 400 affordable housing units. We have 2 lanes of the road, of the new Immokalee Road, as I say that. And then a 100-foot right-of-way donation over on the old Immokalee Road where we can have a discussion about wildlife crossings when that section of road is revamped. So it's far better for our community. Yeah, we have more density. They have the potential of doing more density if they do the village, but if they don't, then all of those benefits in fact go away. So it's been moved and seconded that we approve the project with the stipulations as stated by Commissioner Saunders. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Same sign, same sound, so moved.
Thank you.
Now, it's 12 o'clock. I suggest we're not going to take a lunch break here, ladies and gentlemen. There are circumstances that are going on out there with regard to this storm that I want folks to pay attention to as we're going here. So,
Mr. Chair, I think we need to be, given the fact that there is a category 3 to 4 out there, I think we need to be very, very specific about what these changing circumstances are and how it affects us in Collier County.
well, and we're not going to bring Dan Summers in for another report. I think we need to probably go ahead and adjourn.
Well, there's one thing on that is time sensitive on here, and it's a yes or no, and it's 10C. It's appointing somebody to the.
I'll make a
planning
motion to
commission.
approve 10C,
Thank
the
you.
appointment for,
Yeah.
of Mr. Sparaza.
Oh,
Yes, and
I'll second that.
I thank all of you for advertising it. We did get a lot of applications. I had 3 finalists and interviewed all 3 for well over an hour. He is a outstanding candidate, and we want him to be able to attend the next meeting, so that one's time sensitive.
With all due respect, and I might have gotten this completely backwards, your district on the planning commission is the one that has a vacancy, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yeah. There's somebody in that seat, but she expires, and then she also got caught in the district map change. She's now in District 4, and she doesn't qualify for the District 1 seat.
Her term expired.
I'm sorry, yes, her term expires. Yes, sir. Yeah, she's very healthy.
I'm going to say, let's, you don't have to make a motion.
There's a motion
Yeah.
seconded.
It's been motioned and seconded. I'm going to call for the vote. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, same sound, so moved.
And then we have a gentleman who's been here.
Do you want to hear the Tiger Tail Beach item now or continue it? Who made the motion
I
to
would like
bring
to
it
make
up?
a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Yeah,
I
a second.
understand that. All right, I think it's prudent for us to just go ahead and adjourn, just so you know. I know there's folks that have been here all morning long, and I have to apologize, but the storm has shifted, just so you know. The storm has shifted. So go home, take care of your things that you need to do. We'll see you at our meeting in second meeting.
14 days.
With that, we're adjourned.